Chapter 10:30. Gap. Yes, for the first time, he realized that there was a gap between him and her. She was the most beloved daughter of the Lan family. As for him, he was no longer the young master of the Chen family that everyone fawned over. This twisted relationship lasted for half a year. Half a year later, he thought that he was finally free. After all, the Chen family had returned to its original state. But she refused to let go of him. She should know how much he hated to be tied down. She said that she liked him every day. However, whenever he was close to her, she would always show a troubled expression. Did she think that he didn't know that she would hug him and look at him with forbearance every time after they were done? If she really liked him, how could she forbear? She was just protecting him according to her childhood habits. He knew that she didn't even like to spend the night with him. Most of the time, she didn't talk to him about her feelings anymore. It was also that year that she started working and made new friends. They were together, but they didn't know about each other. Even the people who appeared around her were equally mature. She probably liked that kind of person. One day, she would understand that she didn't love him. Anyway, he didn't like her at all, so he didn't care about her feelings for him. He thought about it and counted the days until he could be free. But when the day came, he didn't know why he was angry. That night, she sent a text message to her eldest brother. In fact, he saw all of it. She wanted to break up with him. She said that they weren't suitable for each other. They had been together for 3 years, and now she said that they weren't suitable. He looked at her and got more and more annoyed, so he simply drove her out. The next day, she sent him a message saying that she wanted to talk to him. It was clear what she wanted to talk about. After all, the 3-year contract was about to expire. She had used many tricks in the past, and every time, she wanted to keep him. But he knew that if she really wanted to break up with him, she wouldn't use tricks. After he received the message, he was a little annoyed. He probably didn't like her coming to the hospital. Xiao Ziqiu saw it. She was worried that something would happen to him during the surgery in the afternoon, so she stayed by his side. She made him wait for her for a whole afternoon, but she didn't show up. Was she backing out again? While he found it funny, he also felt relieved for some reason. This time, it should be the same as before. There shouldn't be any problems. She did not appear for the next few days. He was used to it and was probably thinking about how to keep him here. But, what was this? Asking someone else to break up with him? Lowering his head, Chen Zhendong forced the words out of his mouth. Where is she? Hellion Vivian stopped in her tracks and asked, Mr. Chen, do you really want to know? Yes. Chen Zhendong sneered. Does the man she likes really exist? Why do I feel like you're lying to me? Hellion Vivian looked at him meaningfully and said, everyone will only choose to believe what they want to believe. Of course, that person exists. Not only does she exist, but she also treats her very well. Mr. Chen, do you know? People need to compare themselves before they know what kind of life suits them better. She found someone more suitable for her than you. Besides, are you really sure that she got together with you because of love? Chen Zhendong paused. Hellion Vivian continued, women like to think that dependence is love. When true love appears, she will wake up. I'll be frank. Lan Yue doesn't want to see you anymore. These words seemed to carry a lot of killing power. Chen Zhendong's expression was not visible, but his voice was calm. I see. He had expected this day to come. When the two of them were intimate and she showed that kind of expression, he thought. He knew the result. He felt the same, didn't he? He didn't like this relationship. The two of them were not supposed to be together. Yes, that's right. Mr. Chen, you can put down your burden and stay with Miss Xiao forever. At this point, Hellion Wei paused and smiled evilly. However, if Mr. Chen changes his mind, you can contact me at any time. Maybe I will tell you something about Lan Yue. Is it necessary to contact me again? Chen Zhendong took the lead to walk in front of Hellion Vivian and pressed the elevator button. What happens to her has nothing to do with me. Yes, it doesn't matter. Lan Yue looked at the slender figure, and for the first time, a smile appeared on her face. She was relieved. Her thin lips gently spat out 2 words. Bye. There was no need to say goodbye, because they would never see each other again. Hellion Vivian looked at her and said, "Try to keep up with him. I've told you before that I can't leave this room," Lan Yue said as she strode forward. To her surprise, she was actually able to keep up with Chen Zhendong's back. Lan Yue's eyes began to open wide. This was the first time she had stepped out of this area in so many days. Hellion Vivian seemed to be sure of something and smiled. "Sure enough." "What?" Lan Yue was puzzled. At this moment, Beligaju walked over and wanted to hold Hellion Vivian's hand, but he stopped in midair. His eyes were a little gloomy. "My master, you're getting more and more cunning. When you lie, I really want to bully you. Who can bully you in this state?" Hellion Vivian reached out and rubbed his ears, smiling very happily. Beligaju also smiled wickedly. "Indeed, I can't do anything in this state." However, how could he guarantee that he would always be in this state? So, his master was sometimes really naive and cute, however, she was still very cunning and had not removed the command until now. "Okay, Lan Yue's figure is almost out of sight. We must hurry up and follow her," Hellion Vivian said as she held Beligaju's hand and ran downstairs. She was even faster than the elevator. She followed behind Chen Zhendong and did not fall behind at all. Chen Zhendong seemed to have made an appointment with someone and went to a bar. It turned out that he had made an appointment with Xiao Qingqiu. Hellion Vivian instinctively looked at Lan Yue's expression. Should she say that she was really calm? There was even a gentle smile on her face. Hellion Vivian gave her a look, wanting her to come over. After all, the living were different from the dead, and they were easily targeted by evil spirits. Of course, from the moment Bailey Jiaoju entered, all the ghosts were like antelopes that had sensed danger. Every single one of them fled in panic. Even Hellion Wei turned her head and glanced at Bailey Jiaoju strangely. Logically speaking, His Highness had always kept a low profile. Why was he so abnormal today, not hiding his demonic aura at all? Chapter 1031. Don't you want to cover it up? Hellion Vivian raised her eyebrows and reminded His Highness. After all, it was a messy scene to see a group of ghosts trembling in front of a cute little thing. Beligaju was gentle. He looked at the ghosts with a smile and asked, "Am I scary?" They nodded. They nodded crazily. Beligaju's eyes darkened, and he asked again, "Am I scary?" "No." The ghosts were very perceptive. Beligaju's silver-white ears stood up. He was still wearing the black gloves and smiled. "You're good at talking." They didn't want to tell such an obvious lie. But why was the great demon in such a bad mood? This was simply a trial for them. Hellion Wei glanced at the ghosts who were shivering and saying one thing and meant another. His Highness seemed to be in a bad mood. However, after thinking about it carefully, she still couldn't figure out why he was upset. Let these ghosts play with His Highness for a while. The ghosts were speechless. Was this a joke? This was clearly a one-sided threat to them. Hellion Vivian put all her attention on Lan Yue and didn't pay much attention to His Highness. Lan Yue couldn't be too far away from Chen Zhendong. The maximum distance between them was 2 meters. Fortunately, the sofas in the bar were not far away. As long as they sat with their backs to each other, Chen Zhendong wouldn't be able to see Hellion Vivian. The sofa was very high and soft. With such soothing light music, they could hear each other's conversation clearly. "Don't drink anymore." Probably because Chen Zhendong drank too fast, Xiao Ziqiu couldn't stand it anymore and reached out to stop him from raising his glass. Chen Zhendong smiled, tilted his head, and lit a cigarette in his hand. He seemed to be very obedient. Lan Yue was sitting opposite Hellion Vivian, so she could see this scene clearly. However, Chen Zhendong couldn't see her. She thought about how they used to get along. She was always the one who accommodated him. Even then, she couldn't make him smile like this. It was time to understand. Sometimes, I wonder if the heavens made me a soul so that I could give up sooner. Lan Yue retracted her gaze and smiled at Hellion Vivian. Now that I see them interacting like this, I realize how silly I was in the past. Hellion Vivian did not say anything. Lan Yue paused and raised her head. Her expression was very serious. I want to live, you know? If I die just like that, those two people will definitely feel guilty, because I became like this because of them. I don't want to be so lowly anymore, to be someone's supporting role, and I don't want their guilt and regret. I want to not owe each other anything. In this way, do you still think I have an obsession? Let's continue this topic later. Hellion Vivian looked at her vibrating cell phone and suddenly smiled. There's a call. Let's hear what Mr. Chen has to say. Lan Ya was stunned and looked at Chen Zhendong, who had drunk more than 10 bottles of wine. Xiao Ziqiu went to the bathroom, leaving him alone at the table. Did he take the time to call? Hello, Mr. Chen? Hellion Vivian's voice was very low. On the other side of the phone, there was no warmth at all. Who's the person she likes? Hellion Vivian reached out to cover the phone and then asked Lan Ya lazily, tell me about a male friend that you usually hang out with. Huh. Lan Ya did not understand why Hellion Vivian asked this question, but she still told her the truth. Hellion Vivian repeated without hesitation. Duan Hailu. Mr. Chen, you should know him too, right? Everyone can see how he treats Lan Ya. I don't believe you. Chen Zhendong's voice lowered. He seemed to be talking to Hellion Vivian, but also seemed to be talking to himself. I don't believe you. Hellion Vivian was calm. Mr. Chen, it's okay if you don't believe me. Forget it. Chen Zhendong sounded drunk. I'm not calling to listen to you lie to me, but to ask you to tell her that the contract hasn't expired yet. If she doesn't want me to terminate it, she should come back quickly. Didn't she do so many things just to get this result? Upon hearing this, Hellion Vivian looked up at Lan Ya. Lan Ya did not look at Chen Zhendong again. Her heart was a little numb. He thinks that I did all these, but in fact, there's no difference. Even if I've become a spirit, I'll still stay by his side because of my obsession. If I were him, I'd feel the same way when facing such a shameless person. Hellion Vivian looked at Lan Ya and let the phone remain silent. Then, she said faintly, I'm not talking about you, but him. Lan Ya was shocked. What do you mean? Hellion Vivian did not answer Lan Ya's question immediately. Instead, she said to Chen Zhendong, Mr. Chen, I don't want to beat around the bush with you anymore. You're the one who was nice to other women, and you're also the one who gave up on Lan Ya. Why do you think that Lan Ya will stay put and wait for you? Maybe you'll receive an invitation from Lan Ya soon. Are you being unreasonable just because you're younger than her? I'm really sorry, but I won't help you pass on your message because I don't want my friend to be disturbed by her ex-boyfriend when she's pursuing her happiness. To be honest, Mr. Chen, if you keep this attitude, Lan Ya might even hate you when she sees you again. Hate? Chen Zhendong was shocked. He even had difficulty breathing. So, she's really in love with someone else. Yes. Hellion Vivian's words were very simple. After getting such an answer, Chen Zhendong did not say anything else. Instead, he looked down and hung up the phone. He did not keep drinking like he did just now. Lan Ya smiled. He's probably not bothered about me anymore. I know that she's really in love with someone else. I'm relieved. As expected, Xiao Ziqiu walked over and reached out to touch his head. Then, he hugged Xiao Ziqiu in his arms. From Lan Ya's angle, she could still see Xiao Ziqiu's slightly red face. Lan Ya thought that she could finally be free. After she died. Yes, she died. If this went on, she might not be able to return to her body. But, it did not matter. Finally, he could pull out all the thorns in his heart one by one. They all said that love had no substance. Wait until you feel the pain in your heart for the first time. Then, you'll realize that you've fallen in love with someone. She fell in love with him too early. Therefore, even forgetting was painful for every bone in her body. She had to disassemble and reassemble herself, and then watch him embrace someone else. As long as she did this, she could say it casually. Chen Zhendong, I don't like you anymore. It's true. I don't like you anymore. Chapter 1032. Lan Ya took a step forward and was finally able to cover a distance of 3 meters. At that moment, she knew that she had let go of everything. She turned around and thanked Hellion Vivian. Helian Vivian narrowed her eyes and said, I didn't do anything, because I can't send you back yet. That's good enough. Lan Ya said with a smile, there are less than 3 days left. Before that, I can still maintain this appearance to see my family and friends, unlike the previous few days where I can only stay in the same place. Shop owner, I hope you and the person you like can be happy. After that, Lan Ya glanced at Beligaju who was sitting next to her and said, you two are a good match. Helian Vivian did not know how Lan Ya could tell the relationship between her and His Highness. She was stunned for a moment. Beligaju, who had been silent all this time, looked up and smiled elegantly. Thank you, we will. Lan Ya did not say anything else. She took one last look at Chen Zhendong and turned around, tears flowing down her cheeks. Her back was very straight. She was fearless, just like every time she negotiated a contract in the business world. However, there were scars behind every strong front. Lan Ya left too quickly, so she did not know that right after she left, a hoarse voice sounded in the bar. A hoarse voice came from the bar. Can her liking only last for so long? 3 years. No, that's not right. She didn't like me from the beginning. Helian Vivian turned around and looked at him. Chen Zhendong pressed his stomach with one hand and pushed away Xiao Ziqiu who was trying to help him with the other. He looked at Xiao Ziqiu and said, she didn't want to answer my call. That person should be telling the truth. If she likes someone else, what am I? He had expected this day to come. That was why he tried his best not to fall for her. Because he wasn't sure if he could bear her leaving after being loved by her like that. He thought that it would not be so soon. It did not make sense for it to be so soon. Senior. Xiao Ziqiu wanted to stop Chen Zhendong, but Helian Vivian turned around and stood in front of them. From what Mr. Chen said, it doesn't seem like you dislike Lan Ya. Helian Vivian looked at Chen Zhendong. She did not care about his expression and said directly, Mr. Chen, if you want to see Lan Ya again, please come with me. Upon hearing this, Chen Zhendong's eyes widened in shock. Without thinking twice, he caught up with Helian Vivian. No, senior brother, your stomach must not be acting up. You must go to the hospital first, Xiao Ziqiu insisted. Helian Vivian looked at Chen Zhendong with a faint smile. Mr. Chen, do you think it's appropriate for you to have another woman by your side at this time? Xiao Ziqiu's expression changed. I didn't. I believe you. Helian Vivian really believed him this time. What I want is Mr. Chen's decision. It has nothing to do with Miss Xiao. Chen Zhendong said in a deep voice, Ziqiu, go back first. When we meet again this time, ask Chen Jie to come along. Then, you won't be misunderstood again. Xiao Ziqiu did not let go of his hand. Next time is next time. Senior brother, it's really not good for your health to be delayed for too long. That's my business. Chen Zhendong's voice was very calm. If one listened carefully, one would know that there was coldness in his politeness. Xiao Ziqiu paused, and his fingers slipped down. Helian Vivian did not look at Chen Zhendong. Instead, she turned to look at Beligaju, who was beside her. What if there's another woman by your side and I misunderstand her? Beligaju raised his eyebrows and said slowly, apart from you, what other woman by my side have I ever had? Helian Vivian chuckled and looked at Chen Zhendong's face again. This is why Lan Ya left you. Chen Zhendong's body suddenly swayed. How many years has she known you? And how many years has Miss Xiao known you? Helian Vivian said in a very calm voice, whether you did it on purpose or not, you've wronged her because of another woman. Xiao Ziqiu opened his mouth. Little beauty, you're not an adult yet. Why do you sound so bad? Helian Vivian laughed. Sorry, I've always been like this. My time is limited, but Miss Xiao has no intention of leaving at all. Xiao Ziqiu laughed as well. She found it funny. Where did this little girl come from? Why did she have to care about their business? Senior, you can't possibly. Chen Zhendong did not wait for Xiao Ziqiu to finish and said, you're right. Whether I did it on purpose or not, I shouldn't have anyone by my side except for her. But I still want to say that I've never done anything wrong to her. It doesn't matter who the other people are. Where is she? Helian Wei shrugged her shoulders and said unwillingly, Mr. Chen, to be honest, You're actually quite a jerk in my heart. However, I don't want to ruin the relationship between childhood sweethearts. Besides, I've been growing recently, otherwise, I really wouldn't want to help you. Bailey Jiaoju listened to a certain someone's whisper and the corners of his mouth curled up. He was completely spoiling her. She was so stubborn every time, but in the end, she still helped him. Xiao Ziqiu was concerned about Chen Zhendong and wanted to follow them. This time, Chen Zhendong's eyes were really cold. Xiao Ziqiu knew that it would not end well if she followed them, so she could only stay where she was. The three of them left the bar. Chen Zhendong thought that Helian Vivian would bring him to a trustworthy place. But he did not expect that she would bring him to a hospital. This hospital was very special in Beijing. It only accepted patients with serious diseases. Those who entered it were either cancer patients or vegetative patients. Chen Zhendong frowned. He did not know why, but he felt uneasy. Why did you bring me here? Mr. Shen, aren't you curious about how I met Lan Ya? Helian Vivian looked at him with a faint smile. Her kasaya swayed slightly. Actually, we're not friends. I'm a Daobao shop owner who specializes in yin and yang business. She came to me because she needed help. Chen Zhendong's eyes darkened. What do you mean? Mr. Chen, haven't you always suspected that everything was planned by Lan Ya? Unfortunately, she didn't plan to not appear in front of you. She can't appear in front of you at all, because she's dead, Helian Vivian said the last sentence. Like a thug, Chen Zhendong suddenly roared with reddened eyes. Take it back. Take back what you just said. After that, he chuckled and held his forehead with his hand. His whole body seemed to be trembling for some reason, and he no longer looked as cold as before. Even his voice was hoarse. I'm getting worse and worse. I can't believe that I foolishly believed a child's words just because I wanted to see her. Chapter 1033. Helian Vivian still wanted to say something. But Chen Zhendong did not intend to listen anymore. She must be lying to him. That must be it. Chen Zhendong did not give Helian Vivian a chance to speak. He turned around and left. His fluke mentality was tinged with a trace of madness. He walked very fast, and when he drove, it was more like he was racing. Chen Zhendong did not go home. Instead, he went to Lan Ya's place. He still remembered how dismissive he was when she gave him the key. But now, he pressed the doorbell, hoping that someone would open the door for him. He kept calling that number. It was still not in the service area. He had never experienced a moment where he couldn't find her. So he had never paid attention to how to find her, except for the apartment they shared and the phone they used to contact each other. Yes. Her friend. Chen Zhendong turned on the phone again and paused. In the past 3 years, he had never cared about who her closest friends were. He only remembered hearing her say that she would not play with those people in the past anymore. It seemed that because of his attitude, the few brothers in the courtyard were not as friendly to her as before. As for the new friends she made, he seemed to have never listened to them carefully. So much so that she became quieter and quieter in front of him. He had even forgotten the last time she smiled in front of him. Chen Zhendong raised his fist and punched the door frame hard. He strode out of the apartment, turned the car around, and wanted to go to the Lan family. He used to be very tired of the contract, and even reminded her not to tell her family about them. In other words, the two of them had always been in a secret relationship. No wonder she did not like to smile in front of him anymore. Chen Zhendong suddenly felt a little flustered. His throat hurt, but he forced himself to drive. He finally arrived at the Lan family's house. Strangely, there were only servants in the house. The Chen family and the Lan family were aristocratic families. Although he had deliberately avoided coming to the Lan family's house for the past 3 years. But Auntie Wang, who was cooking, still recognized him. Auntie Wang seemed to be very surprised to see him here. Chen Zhendong did not say anything. He covered his painful stomach with one hand. For the first time in his life, he did not have manners. He went straight to the 2nd floor and pushed open the wooden door of the room she lived in when she was young. No one. Her things were all there. But there was no one. Panting heavily, Chen Zhendong walked over to her. There was a photo on the bedside table. It was a photo taken by Uncle Lan when they were 7 years old. The two of them sat on a small folding stool with their heads touching as they shared an ice cream. Chen Zhendong did not understand. When they were young, he knew that he had to give in to her. Why did he let her suffer so much after they grew up? Young Master Chen, Aunt Wang finally caught up with him. She looked at Chen Zhendong and panted slightly. "Why are you here?" Chen Zhendong looked up and asked in a low, hoarse voice, "Auntie Wang, where's Lan Ya? Where did she go? Did you go out to eat with Uncle and the others?" Auntie Wang paused and stared at Chen Zhendong for a while before she said, "Young Master Chen, you're indeed estranged from eldest miss. No wonder you don't know anything." Speaking of this, Auntie Wang's eyes were obviously red. "But since Master and Young Master didn't inform you, they probably didn't plan to let you know. I read the news 2 days ago. Young Master Chen, you and Miss Xiao are very compatible. In the future, you'd better not come to the Lan family." Chen Zhendong had never thought that one day he would be driven out of the Lan family by Auntie Wang. But compared to this, he was more interested in knowing what had happened. Where was Lan Ya? Where was his Lan Ya? Where did she go? Chen Zhendong stood outside the villa in a daze and watched the door close in front of him. He could clearly feel Auntie Wang's hostility toward him. As smart as Chen Zhendong was, he knew very well that Auntie Wang would not treat him like this if it were not for the permission of everyone in the Lan family. "Mr. Chen, do you really want to know why?" Helian Wei walked out from the dark night, followed by the adorable His Highness. Chen Zhendong's eyes were bloodshot. "I knew from the beginning that Mr. Chen wouldn't believe me, so I prepared something." Helian Vivian took out her mobile phone and opened a few pictures, all of which were sent to her by Monkey. Some were clear and some were blurry, but they were not obstructive to the human eye. After seeing those pictures, Chen Zhendong snatched Helian Vivian's mobile phone, his eyes shaking violently. "Mr. Chen, you should be familiar with this car." Helian Vivian's voice was very calm. "This car had an accident 5 days ago, not far from the hospital where you work. The investigation showed that the car owner disrupted the steering wheel in order to avoid oncoming cars, thus knocking down an eco-friendly tree. Due to the strong impact, the tree trunk broke and fell on the roof of the car. The car owner's mobile phone was damaged in the accident, and even the SIM card was crushed. There was no one in the passenger seat, and the driver was Lan Ya. As Chen Zhendong listened, he clenched the mobile phone in his hand and tried hard to find any loopholes. He really hoped that these pictures were fake. However, no one knew better than him that there was indeed an accident near the hospital that day. This was because he was not performing surgery at that time. Instead, he was sitting outside and chatting with Xiao Ziqiu. The young nurse who came back from outside the hospital also mentioned that there was a big car accident at the corner of the hospital, and she did not know if the other party could be saved. Chen Zhendong's face was getting paler and paler, to the point that he could not even feel the pain from his stomach. This was because there was one place that hurt more than his stomach. It was so painful that it was almost hollowed out. Helian Wei looked at him, but she did not stop what she was going to say. "I can also tell you the reason why Lan Ya got into an accident that day. She was already in a bad mood when she saw you sitting together with Xiao Ziqiu. Furthermore, she had a fever for 2 days, so she couldn't avoid the car that crashed into her. It was the most fatal blow." Chen Zhendong bent over in pain. It was as if the world was collapsing and breaking apart. It was all because of him. No wonder Auntie Wang kicked him out. If he were Auntie Wang, he would kill himself with a knife. Why did he talk to another woman at that time? Why didn't he know that she had an accident? Why didn't he notice that she had a fever when she left that day? Why was he the one who was alive, but she was the one who died? Chen Zhendong reached out his hand and clutched the shirt in front of his chest so tightly that his knuckles turned white. He curled up on the ground like a desperate wolf and let out an unprecedented roar. He was filled with hatred, and there was only one person he hated, and that was himself. Chapter 1034. Helian Vivian stood beside Chen Zhendong. She took a step forward and looked down at him. "I want to know how much you regret it, Mr. Chen. If you had a chance, would you be willing to exchange your life for Lan Ya's?" "Yes. Chen Zhendong suddenly raised his head, and his black hair hit his face. What can I do? I'm willing to try anything. Please, as long as she can come back, I don't care what happens to me, as long as she can come back. Hellion Vivian smiled. As long as you're willing, Mr. Chen. I told you that I'm a Daobao shop owner, and I only deal in yin and yang businesses. I lied to you about one thing, Mr. Chen. Lan Ya is not dead, but without your consent, she can only live for 3 days at most. She's now in the hospital I took you to before. She's in a deep coma with tubes all over her body, and she needs to be resuscitated from time to time. The doctors have already pulled her back from the brink of death twice. The third time is her tribulation, and if you can give her your lifespan, she can pass the tribulation safely. Okay. Chen Zhendong did not even ask how many years he would give her and how he would give it. He looked at Hellion Vivian with a deep gaze. Hellion Vivian looked at him and asked, even if she doesn't like you like before after she wakes up? You should know that no one will be loyal to you after seeing that scene. Besides, you haven't shown up for 5 days. The Lan family is not stupid. They know very well why Lan Ya appeared near that hospital, and they know that you've been intimate with Xiao Ziqiu recently. Even if it's an illusion, the Lan family will never allow Lan Ya to like you again. Maybe after she wakes up, the Lan family will keep her away from the Chen family. Besides, her elder brother has always doted on her, and she has a lot of good resources around her. It won't be long before she finds her ideal husband. I've said before that the best way to forget an old relationship is to start a new one. Even if you exchange your life for Lan Ya's, she won't be grateful to you. She might even gradually forget about you because you're not by her side. Chen Zhendong clenched his fingers and loosened them one by one. His throat hurt as if he had swallowed a knife. Yes. Even if she would forget him. Even if he was no better than a beast in her heart. He also wanted her to come back to life. In the past, what he was most afraid of was that she would suddenly wake up one day and realize that her feelings for him were not love. Only now did he realize that what he was most afraid of was that after she left, he would still be alone in this world. The two of them shared too many memories. He still remembered that when they were young, he would sit on the floor and play with building blocks when she would fall out of bed. When he saw the blood on her face, he would cry before she could cry. Were people always like this? He was the best at expressing himself when he was young. When they grew up and were spoiled, they would forget the person they treasured the most. If that's the case, then come with me, Hellion Wei said as she brought Chen Zhendong to another place. That place was no longer the intensive care hospital at the beginning. Instead, it was the corner of a road. On the left side of the intersection, there was a broken tree. Because it was already late at night, this place looked particularly desolate. Do you know why people burn paper and cry at funerals after they die? Hellion Vivian looked at Chen Zhendong and said, it's so that the ghosts on the 7th day of their death have a place to return to on that day. Chen Zhendong did not understand the reason behind this. After all, he was a doctor and had never believed in ghosts. But now, he believed in it. Hellion Vivian did not hide anything from him. She explained it in a concise and easy-to-understand manner. Under normal circumstances, after a person dies, the thing they miss the most is their physical body. Even if they are chained by ox head and horseface, it can't stop them from longing for their previous life. This is because the physical body is the only thing they can leave in this world. So when I saw Lan Ya, I was very puzzled as to why she was trapped in an apartment instead of wandering near her physical body. It was only after I saw you that I understood. Mr. Chen, even if you didn't admit it at that time, I was very sure that you liked Lan Ya very much. This is because if it weren't for the stubbornness in your bones, it wouldn't have caused such a restriction. Lan Ya's soul left her physical body here. In order for her to successfully return to her physical body, I will light the soul returning lamps around this area. Mr. Chen, you just need to sit here and guide Lan Ya with your stubbornness. As for other situations, you don't need to worry about them. Just close your eyes. However, there is one thing that requires your lifespan to light up. So, you have to tell me your birth date later. If you don't know your birth date, you can also tell me your ID number. Chen Zhendong did not hide it and told her his ID number. He had heard of this kind of method before. It was all stories. He did not expect that he would be in this situation one day. As soon as the formation was activated, the whole street seemed to have entered another dimension. Everything was extremely quiet. The cars in the distance seemed to be gradually decreasing. Until the last car was gone, an unknown fog rose. Chen Zhendong began to whisper Lan Ya's name. It was actually not safe to use such a formation, because it was equivalent to bringing the yin and yang road to the human world. As soon as the soul-returning lamps were lit, a few black shadows appeared. They walked forward with numb faces, and their clothes were a little wet. After seeing Chen Zhendong, they approached him bit by bit. However, it was obvious that since Helian Weiwei could make such a formation, she was not worried about these evil spirits. She smiled and wanted to kill them with the Buddha beads. What Helian Vivian did not expect was that His Highness would be faster than her. In just a flash, he appeared in front of Helian Vivian again. The black shadow behind him was like an exploding smoke bomb, turning into puddles of dirty water. Beligaju just curved his thin lips, and his silver-white ears stood up. He was very gentle and elegant, but it could not hide his demon nature. He looked at Helian Vivian and smiled gently. Killing ghosts is such a dirty thing. How can I let my master do it? Helian Vivian silently put away her Buddha beads. After all, His Highness was very strong today. She would rather be a quiet wallflower and let him vent his anger first. It turned out that His Highness was indeed more ruthless than usual. There was originally a resentful evil spirit hiding here. When it saw that the situation was not right, it wanted to escape, but it was also killed by His Highness. The evil spirits in the distance trembled. Who the hell said that those with long ears were cute and easy to deal with? Come out, I will definitely not kill you. Chapter 1035. Chen Zhendong closed his eyes and couldn't see the changes around him. He also didn't know the gloomy feeling when the soul-returning lamp swayed. In the eyes of outsiders, such a scene was not considered safe. There was an uncomfortable dampness in the air. Generally speaking, such a situation would only occur when the gates of hell were wide open. Usually, no one in the human world would dare to light the soul-returning lamp unless they didn't want to live anymore. The Reapers originally wanted to see who had the guts to bring the yin-yang road to the human world and were about to take him to hell. Who would have thought? They were dumbfounded as soon as they arrived at the scene. In the smoke, Beligaju stood there with a malicious ghost under his feet. He turned sideways and a cold light flashed in his eyes. What's the matter? No, 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 no. The Reapers immediately retreated 10 meters and shook their heads in unison. Please continue, please continue. We're just passing by. The evil ghosts cried, Lord, if you don't take back the yin-yang road, this person will kill all the ghost. The Reapers looked at each other and began to look at the sky, pretending not to understand what the evil ghosts were saying. The evil ghosts were speechless. Okay. Helian Weiwei looked at the last flicker of the soul-returning lamp and smiled. Ju, you can stop now. They probably won't attack again. The evil ghosts looked at Beligaju and nodded. They looked extremely miserable. His Highness smiled. Actually, I don't like to fight. If you see me in the future, you'd better take a detour. Look at our ghost-like faces. Even our mothers might not recognize us. How dare you say that you don't like to fight? The evil ghosts collectively burst into tears. The Reapers felt pain when they watched from the side and didn't dare to get close. They roughly estimated that the Great Devil's mood today didn't seem to be very good. After Beligaju finished laughing, he turned to look at them. His entire body was emitting a black fog that perfectly blended with the night. The people over there, have you finished passing by? The Reapers shivered and immediately turned around. They walked straight away and didn't even dare to look back. Beligaju withdrew his hostility and looked at Helian Vivian gently. The other party is really unfriendly. Helian Vivian coughed softly. They were all beaten up by you. No matter how friendly they were, they could only kneel on the ground and call you Lord Ju. Master. Beligaju's silver ears twitched. That handsome face that could make even the moonlight pale had a trace of doubt, as if he was asking Helian Vivian what she was thinking. That look was simply piercing straight into one's heart. Hellion Vivian hugged him and rubbed his head happily. She said domineeringly, "They are indeed not very friendly. Next time you see them, continue to beat them up." The Reapers were speechless. Beligaju also reached out his hand and held Hellion Vivian's back. The corners of his mouth curled into a devilish smile. That damn order. He couldn't touch her to his heart's content. "Okay, there's one last step." Hellion Vivian moved her fingers, and the prayer beads turned into a scimitar. It was the original form of the phoenix bone scimitar. The phoenix blood could condense souls. Chen Zhendong, who was in charge of summoning souls, felt his head gradually become heavy. His body was sometimes cold and sometimes hot. Perhaps it was because his stomach was too painful, he couldn't even hold on and fell to one side. He didn't know what was going on. He couldn't open his eyes because of the pressure. He could feel that familiar aura around him. The person he didn't know how to cherish the most in the past. It seemed like she was right beside him. Chen Zhendong wanted to speak, but he found that he couldn't move at all. He only had a trace of consciousness, and he couldn't even open his eyes. She seemed to be deliberately keeping a distance from him. She didn't hug or kiss him as usual when she saw him. Instead, she stood beside him and whispered wishes for him to be happy. Chen Zhendong clenched his fingers tightly, but he still couldn't open his mouth. It was a bit like a ghost pressing down on the bed. His consciousness was clear, but his body couldn't wake up. She seemed to have misunderstood something. She laughed in his ear and said, "I know you like Xiao Ziqiu very much. But why didn't you tell me that you like her so much? I told you from the beginning that if you liked someone else, I would definitely set you free. Why do you have to make such a fuss? When did he like Xiao Ziqiu?" Chen Zhendong couldn't make a sound, and he couldn't express his feelings at all. He could only listen to her. "Actually, if you told me earlier, you wouldn't think that I'm impatient every time you see me. Maybe in your mind, I'm a shameless and unprincipled person, but in fact, I know what's important and what's not. I don't know if you'll believe me this time, but I can really promise that I won't threaten you with the Lan family, and I won't take the initiative to see you or pester you. Whether it's in this life or the next, I can do it. So, little brother Dong, you can rest assured." Little brother Dong. How long had it been since she called him that? Ever since the two of them got together, she liked to call him by his full name. Because she said that since they were lovers, they couldn't just be buddies like before. And what did it mean to call him by that name again? Whenever Chen Zhendong thought about it carefully, he would feel that his internal organs were hurting. She wouldn't take the initiative to see him or pester him. In fact, it was a breakup. In a real sense, it was a breakup that she said. It was a sentence that he couldn't avoid for a long time. And not only in this life, but also in the next life. Was she not going to appear in front of him again? In other words, from now on, Chen Zhendong was no longer a special existence to Lan Ya. She would no longer take care of him like she used to. What's more, she wouldn't stretch out her hand and say, "Zhendong's stomach isn't good, I'll drink it for him." She even rejected him in the next life. Did she never want to come back? What should he do then? Chen Zhendong started to feel very cold. His stomach was still cramping as if something was pressing on his chest, making it difficult for him to breathe. Why? Why did she say such cruel words? Couldn't she come back? Come back to him? That's right. How could she come back to him? After being treated like that by him, she probably wouldn't forgive him anymore. But why did she have to include the next life? Could it be that he couldn't get her back even if he used his lifespan? Chen Zhendong didn't know that Lan Ya said that because she had seen the interaction between him and Xiao Ziqiu in the past 2 days. Lan Ya had also advised him many times to let go of him. But none of them were more straightforward than this time. He showed her the difference in gentleness. When he was with Xiao Ziqiu, he was always more patient. Chapter 1036. Lan Ya was not sure if he would have been together with Xiao Ziqiu if the contract had not been there. Whenever she thought of this, her heart ached as if it was bitten by a worm. She thought that it was no wonder that he hated her so much that he felt impatient when facing her every day. He even chased her out in the middle of the night because he would not treat her gently. Lan Yue did not know what the shop owner said to him to make him agree to help her. After leaving the bar, she had been wandering around, as if she could not go back to the Lan family's house. If she had not heard his voice, she would have been dragged away by other evil spirits. Lan Yue chuckled softly. This should be the best ending for him. Lan Yue knew very well that the shop owner must have told Chen Zhendong about her car accident to be able to persuade him to help her. Chen Zhendong was so smart that he could figure out the reason as soon as he saw the accident site. She did not want him to think that she had an accident because of him. She did not want him to feel guilty. Now that he had helped the shop owner to find her soul, it should make him feel more relaxed and better to be with Xiao Ziqiu. Actually, she did not want him to know that something had happened to her. However, since it had come to this, there was no other way. She wanted him to know that she would not pester him anymore. He did not seem to believe it. Lan Yue shook her head with a bitter smile. However, she knew him very well. Through this incident, she could see that he still cared about her. She thought that he only hated her. It turned out that it was not because of her. That was enough. Otherwise, she could not bear the fact that the person who had loved her since she could remember hated her for the rest of her life. Even if she had to die, she did not want that. Because if that was the case, it would be too tragic. She had given so much love to one person. She did not expect to get a response, but she hoped that at least he would not hate her. She was not like what he thought. In order to get him, she would use all kinds of despicable means. She had always hoped that their relationship would be simpler. However, she had chosen the wrong way to start. Now, she finally got some of the panic on his face. He was probably still worried about her. However, it was never the love she wanted. Lan Yue took one last look at Chen Zhendong. As the soul returning lamp was extinguished, her soul also disappeared into the white fog. In the deserted alley, the surrounding scenery started to spin again. Chen Zhendong slowly opened his eyes from the pain. He could move now, but there was no one in front of him. He leaned against the cold metal beside him, thinking that when he woke up, he would see her safe and sound. But all he could see was a young girl in a kasaya and a silent boy. He stood up abruptly, his stomach twisting into a ball. With great effort, he asked the unimaginable guess, "Did you fail?" "Why am I completely fine?" "I didn't fail." Hellion Vivian's voice was very faint. "The soul-returning lamp doesn't need your birth date, but Lan Yue's. I was just fooling you just now. I didn't say anything about borrowing your lifespan. It's just that opening the Yin-Yang Road will attract a lot of evil spirits. These evil spirits will usually drag humans down to accompany them. With me here, of course you'll be safe." Chen Zhendong didn't care about the lie anymore. "What about Lan Yue? Where is she?" "Since the soul-returning lamp has been extinguished, it means that she has gone back. Your obsession is still very necessary to keep the soul. She should be in the hospital, but I don't know if she's awake now." Hellion Vivian saw that her prayer beads had lit up again, which meant that she had completed another merit, so she was not worried about Lan Yue's subsequent problems. Chen Zhendong stood up with one hand on the ground, thanked Hellion Vivian in a low voice, and was about to look for her. Hellion Vivian looked at his back and said, "Although I lied to you about borrowing your lifespan, the rest of the situation is true. Lan Yue won't treat you like how she used to. Mr. Chen, you'd better be mentally prepared." Chen Zhendong suddenly stopped in his tracks. He paused for a few seconds before he started walking again. He rushed to the hospital that he usually wouldn't even go to at the fastest speed. He wanted Lan Yue to see him first after she woke up. However, he was really too naive. After Lan Yue's brother, Lan Shuo, saw him, he didn't even talk to him. He turned his face and directly asked the bodyguards hired by the Lan family to block one of the corridors of the hospital. The shop owner was right. The Lan family had begun to find a way to isolate him from Lan Yue. It couldn't go on like this. At least let him sit in a place where he could see her and wait. However, it was obvious that Lan Shuo hated him very much. Otherwise, he would have greeted him. He just sneered at him and said, "What are you doing here?" "I want to see her." What he said was true. Lan Shuo didn't believe him. "Did Uncle Chen ask you to come?" "In fact, it's not necessary. My sister has been stubborn since she was born. She will be stupid the first time, but she won't be stupid the second time. You can go and live your own life. You don't have to pretend in the future, and you don't have to let her hide this and that in order to maintain the relationship between the Chen family and the Lan family. Our Lan family doesn't care about these things. Similarly, if such a man approaches her again, I will drive him far away. Chen Zhendong was unable to refute Lan Shi's words because he had indeed done so in the past. However, this time, he really didn't think about those things. He just wanted to see her. Just a glance. However, Lan Shi just looked at him coldly with a very indifferent expression. Chen Zhendong, do you know when she was sent here? May 23rd. It has been 5 days since today. Even people who are not very familiar with her have come to care about her. And you are the last one to come. I am her brother, and she is the only girl in the Lan family. She is not delicate, and she has never made things difficult for anyone. Perhaps 3 years ago, when she came back trembling and told me that I should have stopped her when you two were together. Do you know what is at the end of this corridor? It is a sterile ward. In the past 5 days, I have seen her being resuscitated twice. Each time, she really looked like she was about to die. The reason for this result was that after her car accident, no one could arrive at the scene in time. Chen Zhendong, you were in the hospital that day. I don't need to tell you how close you were to the scene of the car accident. You know very well in your heart. What were you doing at that time? Talking about everything with a female doctor from the same department. When she was dying, you were doing something wrong to her. I won't tell my father about this, and I won't tell Uncle Chen, but Chen Zhendong, don't even think about seeing Lan Ya again. Chapter 1037. Chen Zhendong knew that the experienced young Master Lan definitely had the ability to prevent him from seeing Lan Ya. But at the same time, he also knew that the relationship between the Chen family and the Lan family would not become enemies because of this matter. If Lan Shi did not allow him to see Lan Ya, he would talk to his father. The two families were longtime friends. If his father asked, Uncle Lan would agree no matter what. Especially in the past 3 years, you rarely spoke in front of others. For a period of time, I wanted to send you abroad to prevent little Ya from falling deeper. There's something going on between you two, and as a parent, I can see it. But your Uncle Lan also told me not to interfere. Son, have you ever thought that no father is willing to see his daughter like this? You don't have any credibility in your Uncle Lan's heart anymore. He won't agree to you two being together again. Why do you have to do this? I want to see her. Chen Zhendong sat with his head down and slowly clenched his hands on his lap. I just want to see her. Mother Chen had never seen her son like this. Except for when Father Chen was arrested, he had never been like this. For so many years, their son had never not made them worry. Although they were not involved in politics, their achievements in the field of medicine made their faces glow. Their son had always been strong, and it was rare to see him so fragile, especially when he begged them to do something like this. Children from families like theirs would either need their parents in their careers or in their studies. This child was different. He thought about everything and did not need them to solve problems at all. But now, he didn't look like himself at all. As a mother, she knew her son the best. Mother Chen was aware of the overall situation. After hearing Chen Zhendong's words, she put down the tea she made for the father and son and looked at Chen Zhendong. Dongzi, it's fine if you want me and your father to come forward, but you have to remember that this time, it's you who let Xiao Ya down. It's the Chen family who let the Lan family down. The Chen couple went to the hospital together and stayed for more than an hour. After all, they were family friends. The relationship between the previous generation was really good. The Lan family did not refuse Chen Zhendong to visit Lan Ya again. However, when Lan Shi saw him again, there was a hint of mockery at the corner of his mouth that they only understood each other. It was as if he was saying that he could ask his parents to solve it if he could not. Chen Zhendong did not care what Lan Shi thought of him. He only wanted to see that person now. Even if she was lying on the hospital bed, he still wanted to see her again. It was almost 5 o'clock in the morning. He opened the door and unexpectedly met the person on the hospital bed. Chen Zhendong did not expect her to wake up. No one told him. Lan She had even chased him out the first time he had come. Chen Zhendong's heart skipped a beat, and he just looked at her under the light. She seemed to have lost a little weight, and her skin was very pale. Sitting on the hospital bed, she was wearing a large hospital gown. Her slender wrists were exposed from inside, and the back of her hands seemed to have many needle holes. The traces of the car accident were very obvious. The scar on her arm was still there, and her head was wrapped in gauze. Fortunately, there were no obvious wounds on her face. Her body was not very good, but she looked very relaxed. Her two friends were sitting next to her. One of them was her best male friend, and he was holding a spoon to feed her soup. That was supposed to be his seat, but he came late. Once he was late, that seat would no longer belong to him. Lan Ya was also looking at him with a trace of surprise on her face, as if she did not expect him to appear here. However, soon, even the surprise on her face disappeared. She just looked at him, a little wary. What did he do? Why did she need to be wary of him? Chen Zhendong did not understand what she thought of him. He saw Lan She walk over and smile at her. There was a hint of sarcasm in his voice. I couldn't stop him. This guy went to find Uncle Chen and Aunt Chen. That tone of voice seemed to have long excluded him from their world. So it turned out that she did not want to see him? Chen Zhendong's fingers froze, and his stomach began to hurt again. He did not know where this sense of insecurity came from. However, he could clearly feel that something was different from before. The way she looked at him was different. The expression she made when facing him was also different. He couldn't find any trace of the past on her body. He had fantasized about seeing her again many times, but it was never like this. She sat there and looked at him so calmly. It was as if he was just a stranger to her. Of course, there was also a hint of doubt in her eyes. Why are you here? He had always known that she was a person who would not make people feel uncomfortable. However, at the same time, he also knew that she would only smile gently and calmly when dealing with people and things. Just like now, when she asked him, there was something else hidden in the bottom of her eyes, something similar to doubt. Did my parents say that my illness was too serious? She smiled again, a very sunny kind. I'm fine. You don't have to worry, and you don't have to feel guilty. I think I can be discharged from the hospital in a few days. The more she said this, the more he could feel the distance between them. Because after she said these words, her eyes fell on her friend. That person was undoubtedly good to her, giving people a feeling that he was controlling her. Talk less. As expected, she obediently shut up and continued to drink the soup. Only he was left standing there in a daze. However, he thought that it was good to be able to accompany her like this. Even if the person she trusted the most was no longer him. He could predict what Lan She would say to her after she woke up. The place where she had the car accident was only a wall away from him. If he had paid more attention, he might have been able to sense something. However, at that time, he was drinking coffee with another woman. To her, he, Chen Zhendong, was still a bastard who did not know how to care about her at all and would chase her out of the apartment in the middle of the night. Even when she was in the intensive care unit for the past few days, he did not even come to see her. He was still busy going on TV with Xiao Qingqiu. Chapter 1038. He had thought that she would be angry about this, and he had also thought that she would be cold to him. But neither of them would be like this. She didn't complain at all, and it seemed that she accepted everything calmly. His apology was of no use at all. There was no need for him to explain himself. Because he was smiling as if nothing had happened. The feeling of being blocked out of her heart was really more painful than being indifferent. She probably also noticed the movement on his side. After all, several people were talking and laughing there, and only one more wooden person like him was a little eye-catching. She also looked in his direction, thought for a while, and said, "Don't you need to accompany Miss Xiao? In fact, next time, you can come to see me with her." At that moment, he thought that he had misheard. But her voice was so clear. It was so clear that his ears hurt a little. Did she mean that she wanted him to come with other women? In other words, she didn't care who he was with at all. Probably because his expression was beyond her expectation, she explained, "You don't have to worry. I won't destroy your relationship. I mean, you don't have to force yourself to come here alone. You can bring her with you. Although I did act a little ferociously before, believe me, I won't get in your way anymore." He believed her, and it was because of that that he felt numb to everything around him. In fact, Lan Yue had thought that he would appear here. After all, he helped her when she summoned the soul. She felt that it was enough. Later, she heard from her brother that her father intended to keep a distance from the Chen family. Then she knew why he came here. First of all, he was really worried about her. Second of all, he felt guilty. As for the third point, she thought the same as him. No matter what the result of the two of them being together was, it should not affect the relationship between the two families. However, he didn't say a word after coming here, as if he was forced to come here by someone. She didn't know how to face it. She didn't know how much he would believe her now. However, what was reassuring was that at least at this point, he wouldn't think that she had planned everything all along. In order to make him believe her, she tilted her head and looked at the person who was still feeding her soup. She pulled him over and said to him, "I will probably hang out with this guy often in the future, so I won't have time to bother you. You should get along well with Miss Xiao. If there is a chance in the future, maybe we can have a meal together, so you don't have to worry that I will embarrass her when I see her. Uncle Chen and Auntie Chen are old, so you should bring them home." It seems that you have said too much. You just found out. A certain someone rolled his eyes and put the bowl of soup aside. She knew that she shouldn't drag a certain someone into this, but if she didn't do this, how could she make him believe her? To be honest, it was inevitable that they would meet again in the future. He was always silent like this, and she would subconsciously think of the past. That would be too tiring. What's more, his actions always gave her the illusion that he cared a lot about her. In fact, she knew very well what he was like when he truly cared about someone. Just like how he was incomparably gentle when facing Xiao Qingqiu. Therefore, she would rather not worry about him as a buddy. She felt that there was one thing she had to explain clearly to eliminate his guilt, but she didn't know how to say it. Because he was too quiet. Chen Zhendong was indeed very quiet, because he had never imagined what it would feel like. In front of him, she held another man's hand and said that she would pester that person in the future and never bother him again. At that moment, even his throat was so dry that it hurt. He watched as she belonged to someone else in front of him. It was as if someone had cut a hole in his heart with a knife. Cold blood flowed out from it and spread to every part of his body. She really didn't want him anymore. Wasn't it normal? Why did she become like this today? High fever, bad mood, and not in time to rescue her. Which one of them wasn't related to him? She could still smile at him because of the feelings between the two of them when they were young. As for the rest, she would never look back again. Chen Zhendong knew that he was late, but he didn't expect that he was so late. This time, his heart was completely hollowed out. Only his stomach was left with a terrible pain. She seemed to be afraid that he wouldn't believe her, so she said, "The shop owner you met should have told you what I wanted to say, but you're still worried. I know it has something to do with my previous record, but after I'm discharged from the hospital, I'll apply for the visa to go abroad. Uncle can check it, and it's all true. I'm not playing tricks. I don't think it's your trick." He couldn't help but growl. But it was obvious that the effect was always different. The whole ward fell into silence because of his unpleasant voice. She paused for a moment and said, "That's good. Let's get along well in the future, but there's something I want to tell you. Dongzi, car accidents are natural disasters, and no one can avoid them. It's the same principle as death. King of Hell wants you to die at midnight, but he definitely won't let you live until midnight. My fever and low mood are just coincidences with the car accident, so you don't need to feel guilty. My car accident has nothing to do with you. Moreover, if it weren't for you, I wouldn't have been able to come back. I know about the soul summoning spell. Dongzi, I'm very grateful that you stood up to help me. At that time, I really didn't know where my home was, and I was wandering outside for a long time. If it weren't for your voice, I wouldn't have been able to wake up again. So even if you really feel that you've done something wrong to me, you've already taken the blame. Chen Zhendong, I don't owe you anything, and you don't owe me anything. We don't owe each other anything, So you really don't need to feel guilty. He really wanted to refute her words, wanted to tell her that he had never done it out of guilt. He appeared here only because he wanted to see her. Why did she let him go so easily? She didn't even throw a tantrum at him. It really seemed like she said that they didn't owe each other anything. Why was she so cruel? Chen Zhendong wanted to say something, but Lan She used the doctor's examination as an excuse to drive everyone out of the ward. She did have a checkup to do. She looked at him with pale lips and smiled. Her face was even glowing. That's it, Dongzi. Although you may not believe it until now, I sincerely hope that you can be happy in the future. As she spoke, she was picked up by the man and placed in the wheelchair. Just like that, she gradually disappeared in front of his eyes. In the huge hospital corridor, he was the only one who was not welcomed. Chapter 1039. Chen Zhendong didn't know how to describe that feeling. He just felt cold. It was cold everywhere. Xiao Qingqiu's call was still ringing on his phone screen. That ringtone kept ringing. She was overly concerned. She didn't look like an ordinary friend at all. Why couldn't he see through the people around him in the past? Why did he give others a chance to interfere and make her misunderstand? Now, she didn't belong to him anymore. Should he say that he deserved it? He didn't want to let go. He really didn't want to let go. His stomach hurt to a certain extent. In a daze, he saw someone rushing over. It should be the hospital's medical staff. It didn't matter anymore because he knew that the person who turned back wasn't her, and it would never be her. That person who was always worried about her had changed to someone else. Lan Wei really didn't know about Chen Zhendong's stomach pain. After her soul was removed, she saw through a lot of things. Every scene was an illustration of how he felt about her. She didn't want the two of them to become detestable, and she didn't want him to feel burdened. They were unfair from the beginning. She hoped that after they separated, they could balance out. She could see that Xiao Qingqiu was different to him. He gave her a lot of special treatment. For example, he really listened to Xiao Qingqiu. Even his smile was gentle. In the past, when she didn't let him drink, he was always impatient. But when he faced Xiao Qingqiu, he was very quiet. Those things that she cherished seemed to have been thrown away by him. In fact, it was easy to see that a person loved another person. For example, she had a photo of the two of them at home. And what he hid in the drawer was a graduation photo of him and Xiao Qingqiu. Although the two of them were so far away, it was obvious that the two of them had known each other for a long time. So, they had known each other for a long time. Lan Wei. The man bent down and looked at her with his black and white eyes. He was as cold as usual. You know, I don't like to be used. What happened just now? Lan Wei smiled. You saw it. I was talking about breaking up with him. There shouldn't be any misunderstanding about breaking up. The man looked at her and patted her head with one hand. When did you become so stupid? Lan Wei paused and didn't speak. Lan She had already grabbed the man's arm. Are you retarded? Can she move her head now? The man looked like he had just woken up. Why can't I move? I'll be more awake if I knock. You siscon, move away. Lan She went berserk. He grabbed the man's collar and directly pressed him against the wall. He turned his head and said to Lan Wei, Little Wei, you continue to check. I need to talk to this guy alone. Lan Wei. After the commotion, Lan Wei reached out and touched her bandaged head. It seems that you've recovered well. Hellion Vivian appeared behind her just like that. Probably because Lan She and the others didn't close the door when they went out, there was an extremely handsome young man standing by the door. The young man had 2 silver ears on his head, and the smile at the corner of his mouth could make the sun lose its color. Lan Wei looked back at Hellion Vivian with obvious surprise in her eyes. Shop owner. I'm here for after-sales service. Hellion Vivian sat down casually and crossed her legs. How do you feel? Lan Wei smiled. Lan Wei smiled and said, I'm fine. I was thinking of inviting you to my house in 2 days. I didn't tell anyone about the matter of my soul being pulled out, but I mentioned to my brother that you are my savior. I told him that if you didn't send me to the hospital in time, I'm afraid I wouldn't have woken up until now. My brother searched for your address for a long time, but he didn't find anything. He even started to doubt his own ability. Shopkeeper, you really hid it well. If you want to thank me, give me more tips and comments with pictures. Hellion Vivian's thin lips curled up slightly. However, I have a gift for you. Lan Wei raised her eyebrows and asked, what? A recording. Hellion Wei took out a fountain pen and flipped it open. It's about Mr. Chen. You can choose to listen to it or not. It's up to you to decide. Lan Wei paused. The coldness in her palm made her hesitate to make a decision. Hellion Vivian did not force her. She stood up and stretched, looking very beautiful, like a beautiful little beast. I've been busy for a day and a night. It's time for me to catch up on sleep. Oh, by the way, don't forget to leave a good comment for me on Daobao. Lan Wei still wanted to ask her to stay. She reached out and grabbed Hellion Vivian's arm. This time, my family and I all want to. You don't have to be grateful. Hellion Wei mischievously blinked her eyes and interrupted her. Business is business. The customer's satisfaction is our greatest service objective. Lan Wei said, we've prepared a sum of money. I think you should like money very much. Hellion Vivian suddenly paused and held her hand. Please be grateful to me. Fat. Looking at Hellion Vivian's serious expression, Lan Wei finally smiled. This shop owner looked very cool, but in fact, she was very cute. And the young man she brought with her. Lan Wei had never seen such a unique person. It was as if time could not leave any trace on him at all. No one existed in his eyes. Except for this shop owner who could make him smile, everything was like a pool of stagnant water in his eyes. Even the clothes he was wearing were rarely seen on a normal day. Besides, who would wear gloves when going out? For some reason, Lan Wei always felt that he was dressed like the little demons described in comics. Thinking of this, Lan Wei was stunned. Demon? Are these two people really not human? But the shop owner gave her a very warm feeling. If they were not human, would they know so much about humans? No, that was not right. She could only be sure that the shop owner was human. But that young man, there was no trace of smoke on him. Lan Wei unconsciously fell into contemplation. Hellion Vivian raised her eyebrows. What? Nothing, I'm just curious about the identity of the person beside you. Lan Wei said straightforwardly. After all, she did not want to hide anything from the person who saved her life. Of course, she did not want Hellion Vivian to misunderstand. Don't mind it, I don't mean anything else, and I won't tell anyone. Hellion Vivian listened to Lan Wei's explanation and smiled. He is my lover. It was just a few simple words without any prefix. It seemed to be saying that no matter what the other person's identity was, in front of her, he was only her lover. Lan Wei chuckled. What a handsome lover. Yes, what I like is his face. Hellion Vivian did not forget to look back as she spoke. When she found that a certain highness was gone, she immediately stood up. She did not look like she only liked the other person's face. Chapter 1040. Lan Wei didn't expose her. She was always envious of this kind of relationship that seeped into her bones. The person you loved also happened to love you. This was probably the most wonderful thing. And she and Chen Zhendong would never be together. Because Chen Zhendong had his Xiao Qingqiu, after Hellion Vivian left, the doctor who examined Lan Wei walked in. The recording pen was in Lan Wei's pocket. She didn't open it to listen, but her fingers never left the recording pen. She was in a daze no matter what the doctor said to her. After Hellion Vivian handed the recording pen to Lan Wei, she didn't interfere much. After all, only the two of them knew whether to continue this kind of thing. Where did he go? Hellion Vivian looked around the ward, but she didn't see His Highness. She couldn't help but feel strange. After all, ever since she became small, that person had never left her sight. The sun rose higher and higher. When it shone down directly, it hit one's face, making it impossible to open one's eyes. And it was under such a strong sun. Elder Yu, who had finally gone out for a stroll, actually felt a chill coming from behind him. What's going on? The old man held the red string in his hand and circled it twice. He deliberately stopped for a moment, then turned around and squatted in a corner. The people who came and went were all looking back at him with deep meaning in their eyes. No wonder people say that there are many abnormal people in this hospital. Look, another one has gone crazy. Did the nurse not take care of him and run out of the ward? The people whispered to each other, but the old man acted as if he didn't hear them. He continued to lower his head and look around as if he was guarding against thieves. Then, he muttered in a low voice, "Strange, where did that cold air come from? I clearly felt that something bad was nearby, but why was it gone when I turned around? Did I shake it off?" "Old man." A deep voice came from the top of his head. Elder Yu waved his hand without raising his head. "I don't want a single yuan. If you want to give me more." "Who said I was going to give you money?" Her graceful nobility was mixed with a hint of mockery. It sounded very familiar. Tiger Yu's back stiffened, and even his hand that was untying the red thread stiffened. He slowly raised his head and looked at the person standing in front of him. Holy shit! The Emperor. And it was an upgraded version of the demonized version. Why was he here? Shouldn't this man be enjoying himself in the demon world? What? We haven't seen each other for thousands of years. Don't you recognize me? Beligaju smiled evilly. His white teeth bit into his black gloves, and then he gently spat them out, as if he was about to start cooking someone. Yu Lao immediately stood up and expressed his stance. How could this old man not know the Emperor? I'm just surprised that the Emperor is here. I was just about to greet the Emperor. Is that so? Unlike in front of Hellion Vivian, Beligaju was now in his adult form. He raised his eyebrows and looked at Elder Yu. Black fog spread out from behind him, as if the entire hospital's aura would be devoured by his demonic nature. Are you sure you didn't want to run away just now? Elder Yu shook his head like a rattledrum, and his attitude was very firm. Absolutely not. Very good. Beligaju reached out his hand, wanting to touch his red thread. Elder Yu was a person with a divine position. He thought that if the Emperor saw him and invited him to drink this time, he would definitely not fall for it again. Back then, it was because of a pot of wine that he was tricked by the Emperor and even lost 2 red threads. That was how he got married to the Phoenix. This time, he had to withstand any temptation. But Elder Yu never thought that he would actually rob him in broad daylight. He clearly knew that he couldn't beat him. Woo! What are you doing here? Beligaju casually fiddled with the red thread in his hand. Elder Yu felt that he had to protect these marriages well. If he couldn't win, he could only ask for external help. With this thought in mind, he snatched the red thread back from His Highness's hand and shouted at the passers-by, "Help! This person is a demon. He wants to eat me." The passers-by who were shouted at. Beligaju glanced at him, then turned around and smiled at the passers-by. The passers-by immediately felt as if everything had been revived. There's something wrong with my family member's nerves. I can't persuade him to go back by myself. Can you help me call the doctor? Beligaju seemed to be a little distressed. He pressed his forehead with his fingertips. He always likes to bring himself into a deified world and see everyone as demons and ghosts. Seeing this, the passers-by immediately nodded. Don't worry, I'll inform the doctor after I go in. You calm him down first. Thank you so much. Beligaju's elegant etiquette had always been impeccable. You're welcome. Elder Yu stood at the side and watched in a daze as the person he was originally asking for help made a gesture of encouragement to Beligaju as if he was about to complete an amazing mission. Then, he quickly ran into the hospital. He felt that he was retarded. How could he reveal the identity of the Emperor? No one would believe him at all. What a pig's brain. The old man hit his own head with all his strength. Beligaju looked at him with a smile, and a dangerous aura came from him. I'm a demon. I want to eat you. Elder Yu, we've known each other for tens of thousands of years. Why don't you understand my taste? You're so old, so you won't be in my hunting range. Elder Yu. Why did he feel like he had been stabbed in the knee? Alright, let's talk. Why is your red thread so messy? Beligaju gently lifted the red thread with his fingertips, and there was a strong sense of oppression between his brows. The old man was about to cry. There were so many immortals in the world. Please don't bully me, okay? 2 days ago, he had already been beaten up by King of Hell for no reason. Why did he encounter such a great demon today? What happened to caring for the old man? Did something go wrong with the red thread? Bailey Jiu chuckled. He appeared to be somewhat absent-minded, but the words that came out of his mouth went straight to the point. If this kind of thing is known by the heavenly axiom, your divine sense should be weakened by another layer. The old man knew that he couldn't deal with a certain someone, so he shrunk his shoulders and simply confessed everything. It turned out that he had come to the human world to drink and accidentally lost half of the red thread, almost ruining a couple's marriage. He was now trying to save it. Fortunately, the woman's luck is good. She seems to have met some kind of benefactor. Otherwise, it would really be a dead end. As Elder Yu spoke, he wiped the sweat on his forehead with his sleeve. When he thought about it, he felt that it was a false alarm. Beligaju roughly knew who the benefactor he was talking about was. He lowered his head and looked at the faintly discernible red threads, and his eyes flashed. It was just the most ordinary thing, but it could determine marriage. These red threads are all used by you. Where are the ones you haven't used? Chapter 1041. Beligaju's voice was very indifferent, and it even sounded a little nonchalant. However, Yu Laro knew his character very well, so he immediately became vigilant. His entire body was on guard, guarding against Beligaju like he was guarding against a wolf. What does Emperor want to do? Give it to me. Bailey Jiuju's line of sight was lowered. No matter when one looked at his handsome appearance, it always gave people a feeling of superiority. It was a very simple word, but it was very stressful for Yu Laro. Emperor, that's not very good, right? Yu Laro felt that he had to learn to refuse, even if it was a little tactful. Unfortunately, Beligaju didn't want to be tactful with him. Do you want the heavenly axiom to know that you were drunk and neglected your duty? Yu Laro shook his head desperately. Beligaju looked at him and smiled. You can choose not to give it to me. After I snatch it, it'll be the same if I expose you to the heavenly axiom. How could this man always say such shameless words so naturally? Yu Laro's face was full of tears as he obediently placed the 2 red strings that he hadn't used before in Beligaju's hand. Emperor, what do you want the red strings for? He had to ask where they were going to go. This way, he could think of a way to change them. Beligaju raised his eyebrows. Of course it's for Phoenix to tie me up. What else can it be used for? Yu Laro was stunned. Aren't you going to help someone else? Do I look like I have so much free time? Bailey Jiu glanced at him coldly. Yu Laro scratched the wall. Emperor, you've already tricked me into a marriage once. If you hadn't drunk me back then, I wouldn't have made such a big mistake. Beligaju ignored him. He took the red strings and wanted to leave. Yu Laro's voice suddenly sank. If Phoenix knew your true intentions back then, things wouldn't have turned out this way. You've been scheming against her from the beginning. So what? Beligaju's footsteps only paused for a moment before he quickly left that place. Elder Yu was still looking at the pile of red strings and fretting. He didn't expect to see Hellion Vivian when he looked up after tidying up. It turned out that she had been standing there the whole time. It was just that she didn't speak and stayed in the corner. If she didn't walk out, no one would have seen her. Phoenix, Phoenix. Elder Yu's expression immediately changed. Could it be that she had heard everything? Hellion Vivian was more direct. What did he scheme against me? Ah! What scheme? Yu Laro played dumb and tried to change the topic. Hellion Vivian looked at him lazily and smiled. You don't have to tell me. As long as I go to the heavenly axiom to expose you, I will naturally know everything. Yu Lao. Can you two not use the same trick? Yet, this move shamelessly poked at his weak point. I'll tell you. Elder Yu let out a long sigh and began to recall what happened tens of thousands of years ago. That day, it happened to be the Heavenly Axiom's banquet. Snow Mountain wanted to introduce their fairy to the Emperor, so they asked me to be the matchmaker and talk to the Emperor. At the beginning of the banquet, nothing much happened. It wasn't until you entered with the blood-stained machete that everyone quietened down. Only the Emperor looked at you. His eyes lit up, and he let out a low laugh. He told me that the first thing he wanted to do after coming out of the chaos was to raise a very beautiful phoenix. At that time, I thought that the phoenix he was talking about was the real phoenix, so I brought him to the mortal world. Who knew that the expression on his face was very indifferent. Later on, I don't know why, but he became interested in the red string on my hand. It was probably because I told him that once the men and women in this world were tied by the red string and tied a dead knot, they would only belong to each other. That was why he took the red string and tied the two of you together. He said that the phoenix in the mortal world couldn't be compared to the one in Buddhism. The prouder something is, the happier it is when it submits to you. Only then did I know that the one he had always wanted to raise was you. Hellion Vivian quietly listened to Eularo's words and didn't say anything. She just looked at the mess in his hand and asked, "Is your marriage fate wrong?" Eularo couldn't figure out what Hellion Vivian was thinking. "It's being remedied. One part of it is almost recovered." "Yes, I know. Because the benefactor you mentioned just now is me." Hellion Vivian stretched lazily. "Is there a knot between them?" Eularo coughed lightly twice before saying, "Logically speaking, all the red strings in the world should be knots. After all, marriage fate is also formed by walking. If you don't know how to cherish it midway, the color of the red string will become lighter and lighter. When the fate is over, the red string will automatically untie and disappear. However, the red string between you and the Emperor wasn't tied by me. It was the Emperor who learned the method from me and tied it himself. He tied a dead knot. It was also from that day onwards that the two of you gradually began to get close to each other." "Is that so?" Hellion Vivian softly spat out these two words. She lowered her head as if she was thinking about something. Eularo asked tentatively, "Phoenix, since you decided to help this couple, why didn't you give them clear instructions? This way, their red string wouldn't be as unpredictable as it is now." Hellion Vivian raised her eyebrows. "It's nothing. It's best to let nature take its course when it comes to relationships, isn't it? Moreover, I didn't know that I would receive such a business deal in the beginning. As you can see, I'm not an adult yet. What I need the most is to accumulate merit. It's enough to help living beings regain their physical bodies. As for marriage, it's not within my jurisdiction." When Eularo heard this, he paused for a moment. Then, he said hesitantly in a low voice, "If you use merit, growing up will be very slow, right? As long as you have a bottle of holy water, Phoenix can become an adult. Didn't the Emperor tell you?" Hellion Vivian also stopped what she was doing. Her eyes darkened slightly. "No. As expected." Eularo let out a long sigh. "What the Emperor wants is to personally raise you because Phoenix's nature is to recognize a master. When you grow up, you will definitely not be able to leave him." Hellion Vivian didn't say anything. She had always known that men liked the fact that she became younger. However, she had never thought that it would be for this reason. Of course, Eularo didn't dare to say anything more. He had to stop at a certain point. Moreover, that soaring demonic aura was still there, which meant that the man hadn't left this place. Perhaps he was looking for someone in the hospital. He had to leave quickly. Beligaju was indeed looking for Hellion Vivian. He stood outside the window and looked at the bright hospital's empty treatment room. His dark eyes narrowed dangerously. With a snap, the tree trunk broke inexplicably. Even the surrounding snakes, insects, and rats all hid in their holes and trembled a few times. They didn't dare to poke their heads out to see what was happening outside. Chapter 1042. Beligaju walked over. He paused for a moment before he reached out and pressed the button on the table lamp. Although the lights were off, the room wasn't completely dark. The floor-to-ceiling windows gave the moonlight a good channel to pour in, making it look like mercury sprinkling in from outside the room. It was very beautiful. Hellion Vivian's heart was a little different from before. When a certain highness lay down later, she wanted to hug him properly, especially rubbing his ears. Otherwise, she didn't know why she always felt a little uneasy. Time passed little by little. Hellion Vivian could even hear the sound of him taking off his coat. But what she didn't expect was that he didn't lie down this time. Instead, after helping her turn off the lights, he walked out of the bedroom indifferently. It seemed that he wanted to sleep somewhere else. Helene Vivian's eyes suddenly shook. She didn't expect this at all. Her fingers that were outside also froze. He didn't lie down. Why? Wei's long, shapely eyebrows creased. Although two people spent a long time together, there would be a period of not so sweet between them. In order to maintain each other's personal space, it was not a big deal to sleep separately. But she was already used to sleeping beside him every day. Without that person's embrace, she always felt that something was missing. And it was too sudden. It was so sudden that she didn't know what to do. After all, a few days ago, he happily lifted her up very high. So it really had something to do with her growth. Helene Vivian moved left and right, but still couldn't fall asleep. She simply lifted the blanket and sent Qing Chen a WeChat message. If the person you love wants to sleep in a different bed from you, what will you do? At that time, Qing Chen was cultivating with her brother in the demon world. Bailey Shangxie's face was still expressionless. He held his brother with his left hand. He was dressed in a black little demon costume, and there was a pair of demonized wings behind him. Black feathers would fall to the ground as he walked. Around his neck hung a skeleton necklace made of black pearls. His snow-white skin and exquisite facial features always gave people a kind of beautiful to the point of evil. Basically, as soon as he appeared, the demons that were originally running amok in the demon world would have to hide in their caves, trembling, not daring to show their faces. However, the monsters found it strange. The little devil had always fought alone. Why did he bring a human this time? More importantly, they had never seen the little devil so gentle to anyone before. That cautiousness, as if he was afraid that the other party would fall, really blinded them. Moreover, he even smiled just now. He seemed to be in a good mood today. Hey! In a good mood. The monsters looked at each other and rubbed their cheeks vigorously. They didn't see wrongly. The little devil was indeed in a good mood. It was as if red rain was about to fall from the sky. One had to know that every time the little devil appeared in the demon world, it would come with resentment. Its destructive power was extraordinary. Any monster that wanted to run to the human world would usually be treated as a punching bag by him. Today, he actually didn't make a move. This was really too unusual. Bailey Shangxie didn't care about the buzzing monsters around him. He was indeed very happy. Along the way, he only dealt with 2 or 3 overly fierce snake monsters. He didn't do much. After all, he had to look after his little brother. Little Qing Chen sat at the side and watched Bailey Shangxie kill monsters. Every time he saw such a huge monster appear, he wanted to help. However, his big brother was afraid that his clothes would be stained with blood, so he only allowed him to watch from afar. He didn't allow him to come close. Little Qing Chen was obedient. He opened his big round eyes and waited for Bailey Shangxie. Every time Bailey Shangxie killed a monster, he would run over with his short legs and give Bailey Shangxie milk to drink. The two little ones had a good relationship. Although it was said that they were cultivating in the demon world, in reality, it was just a trip to another place. What do you like? Big brother will catch it for you to play with. Bailey Shangxie turned his head and said to Qing Chen, "What do you like? Big brother will catch it for you to play with." Qing Chen didn't really want anything. The pearls that his big brother gave him last time were still there, as well as some jewelry. Every one of them was new. However, it was his first time in the demon world, so he still felt that it was strange. The little one stood there and looked left and right. As if he had discovered something, he suddenly ran 2 steps forward and grabbed a furry tail, wanting to pull it. Bailey Shangxie followed behind him. He wanted to wait until his little brother couldn't pull it out before he helped. Who knew that the monster thought that the little devil was gone, so it arched its body and wanted to eat someone. Bailey Shangxie's eyes suddenly narrowed. He grabbed the tail with his right hand, then pulled it up and kicked it hard. There was a bang. The monster flew more than 20 meters to the east and instantly turned into a puddle of disgusting black water. Qing Chen knew that in the demon world, such man-eating monsters would often come to the human world to cause trouble. The monster just now must have been looking for a crack to the human world. Fortunately, His big brother stopped it. Otherwise, many people in the human world would have died for no reason. Bailey Shangxie frowned. Without waiting for Qing Chen to speak, he held his little brother's hand and lowered his head to blow on it. Obviously, he was worried that the monster just now would hurt Qing Chen. My phone rang. Qing Chen tilted her head and took out her little phone from Bailey Shangxie's pocket. Bailey Shangxie leaned over to take a look. With a cool face, he asked, "Who is it?" "It's Beauty Wei Wei." Qing Chen looked at the profile picture and then at the WeChat message. She was very confused. "This is?" Bailey Shangxie seemed to be experienced. "You're getting a divorce." Qing Chen. "It's just sleeping separately. Why are they getting a divorce?" "Yes, in the future, when the judge asks me who I want to be with, I will say I want to be with mother." Bailey Shangxie immediately expressed. Qing Chen. "It's not getting a divorce. Why did his big brother already think of that?" "Don't worry, mother and father's divorce won't affect us at all. I will take care of you." Bailey Shangxie reached out and patted the little one's head. Little Qing Chen heaved a long sigh of helplessness as he rested his forehead on his hand. Why did he feel that his elder brother was looking forward to the divorce? But how to solve the problem of sleeping separately? He didn't seem to know either. "Let's go out for a drink. Have a heart-to-heart talk." Qing Chen lowered her head and typed on her phone seriously like a little adult. Hellion Vivian looked at the reply on the screen. It was fine to go out on a date, but it was not bad to have a drink. Didn't they say that one would speak the truth after drinking? She could ask him what exactly was on his mind. Did he really only want to take care of her? Otherwise, why did he walk away just now? Or was he tired of her? Hellion Vivian raised her eyebrows. No matter what, she had to talk about it. Chapter 1043. The moonlight in the study was obviously cooler than the one in the bedroom. Belagaju was lying on the sofa with his long legs slightly crossed. He looked at the ceiling with his deep eyes and tugged at his tie with his left hand. Although he was still in his adorable state, his expression was more chilling than ever. The demons didn't dare to approach such a king. They didn't know what was going on. But they were sure that it had something to do with the princess. No one knew what Belagaju was thinking. He raised his arm and covered his forehead. His posture was lazy and handsome, but it was deadly dangerous. No, it was more accurate to say that it was cold than dangerous. His whole body was exuding a strong demonic aura. This was a state that only appeared when he was unhappy. Although no matter how much two people liked each other, there would be space between each other. Even if he knew this kind of thing. He also wanted to monopolize her. Let that person's whole body, including her soul and thoughts, belong to him at all times. Belagaju opened his eyes. There was a faint light in his eyes. Should it be said that she cared about too many things? It seemed that no matter what, she couldn't put only him in her heart. Belagaju was thinking, when he turned around and saw her at the door of the study. "Do you want to drink some wine?" Hellion Vivian raised the 2 bottles of dry red wine in her hand. She sat down cross-legged and began to open the wine. Belagaju reached out and took the wine opener. He lowered his eyes and smiled. "How can I let master do this kind of thing?" To be honest, Hellion Vivian faced such an innocent face. It was really difficult for her to be ruthless and get a certain highness drunk. But thinking about it carefully, a certain highness was drunk, so she could trick him, rub his ears, and hug him to sleep. Hellion Vivian didn't care about anything else. She picked up the wine glass and clinked it with Belagaju. Both of them were wine experts, so the red wine they drank was naturally not bad. But Hellion Vivian thought that she would drink a certain highness and then put her hands on him. Who would have thought that in the end, the one who got drunk was her? When she woke up the next day, her head was extremely heavy. Hellion Vivian glanced at the kasaya she was wearing. Other than the fact that it was a little messy, it was still on her. Perhaps she was being too narrow-minded. But why didn't anything happen last night? In the past, even when she had just woken up, he would hold her down and not let her get up. Is the enthusiasm fading now? Could it be that he had really reached the stage of boredom? Hellion Vivian shook her aching head again. "Come here, Drink some hangover soup. Beligaju frowned as he looked at her. She must have just taken a shower, as her whole body was filled with the fragrance of the shower. Helene Vivian held the bowl and drank the soup. Then, she began to do nothing. Something had indeed changed. He didn't kiss her. In the past, whenever she finished drinking anything he brought over, he would pinch her chin and lower his head to kiss her, no matter what the occasion was. But these 2 times, he did not kiss her. Helene Vivian couldn't figure it out and started to brush her teeth with a toothbrush. Was it because she had grown up and made him lose the pleasure of raising her? If that was the case, he would have just said it. Why did he have to be like this? Helene Vivian spat out the mouthwash and frowned at herself in the mirror. She decided to get a certain highness drunk again tonight. Since it was inconvenient to go out at night, she would put a sign on Daobao that she was not open for business temporarily. That way, she wouldn't ruin her reputation if she didn't accept the orders. Helene Vivian opened her laptop, entered her account number and password, and quickly entered the background of the online shop. The rules of her Daobao shop were very clear. She only did business during the day and only did business at night. It was not easy to confuse. All this time, no one would ask about ghosts during the day. Unexpectedly, Helene Vivian received a message as soon as she logged in. Shop owner, I want to ask you to help me. We seem to have met a ghost, but we also don't seem to have met one. But it's too scary. Someone has died around us. The police said it was an accident, but this accident came too coincidentally. There must be something going on. Shop owner, help us investigate. The person who left the message was a girl. From the looks of it, it was very serious. After all, it was very difficult for an ordinary evil ghost to take a person's life. At most, it would make people feel depressed and scare people. Moreover, evil ghosts had to use a medium to kill people. They would not suddenly kill people. After a person was followed by an evil ghost, the first thing they should do was to dream. They would not die just like that. Helene Vivian intuitively felt that this matter was not simple. She typed word by word, I want to know the meeting address, contact number, the guest's name, and the location of the incident. Shop owner, I've finally waited for you. The person on the other side of the computer seemed to have grabbed onto a life-saving straw as he typed quickly. They all said that you would only appear at night. We've been waiting for you since yesterday. We've been waiting for you for an entire night. We thought there was no hope. Helene Vivian replied, I originally planned to rest for 3 days, but it seems that I can't do that now. The breeding of evil spirits could easily create a gap between the human world and the demon world. She had to see what was going on. After all, a ghost stained with blood would kill a second person after the first time. Leaving such a ghost in the human world would definitely become a disaster. Helene Vivian had dealt with many such cases before. Because in this world, there were many cases of people dying inexplicably. The media would tell people that the other party was an inhumane serial killer. In fact, half of those serial killers were indeed human. The other half were malicious ghosts who took pleasure in killing people. Such malicious ghosts must be eliminated. Helene Vivian looked at the glowing prayer beads on her wrist. If she did it again, she should be completely grown up. What would His Highness's attitude be then? Would he think that she was not as interesting as when she was young? Helene Vivian lowered her eyes. She did not care what his attitude was. What should be done had to be done. You mean it's not just you? Helene Vivian typed with her fingers and her expression was very indifferent. How many of you? There was a quick reply from the other side. 4. What's your relationship? Colleagues, classmates, or friends? Helene Vivian asked in detail. After all, under normal circumstances, it would not be so easy for malicious ghosts to appear if they were very popular. We are all graduate students. We are about to graduate. It was indeed difficult to tell if they were just chatting online. Let's talk about it when we meet. Give me your address. Chapter 1044. Yes, we're in the Wudaoku shopping district, a Korean restaurant. However, the other two still have to do experiments. Boss, can we meet in the afternoon? Wu Daoku again? It seemed that most of the universities in Beijing were there. It felt like the people who got into trouble were all concentrated in this age group. It was probably because she was too impetuous, so it was easy for resentment to grow. Hellion Vivian replied with a okay and then wrote down the contact details. It was about 10 o'clock now, so there was still some time before the afternoon. In the past, she would still be lying in the coffin in His Highness's arms at this time. Such a scene had never happened before. Hellion Vivian looked at Beligaju, who was sitting in front of her and drinking blood. He was still very cute. She just couldn't find the problem. If she had known earlier, she would have caught Yu Laro and beaten him up. As expected, people in love weren't so open-minded. The more she cared, the more she couldn't ignore some things. Hellion Vivian thought that she was already very good at chasing people. After all, she had the aura of a domineering CEO. No matter when, Hellion Vivian was always very confident in her position. Speaking of which, would she get any inspiration from reading novels? Hellion Vivian had always been a person of action. She jumped up from the bed and found a more remote place. Of course, she couldn't do this in front of His Highness. Otherwise, how could she get him drunk at night? Beligaju watched her movements and spat out the blood bag from his thin lips. His long and narrow eyes narrowed. "Hello, young Master Tang." Hellion Vivian felt that it was a little awkward to talk about this kind of thing. What's your wife's phone number?" The man raised his eyebrows playfully and stopped cooking the noodles. "Why are you looking for my wife?" "Well, isn't she writing novels? I want to talk to her about some women's topics." Hellion Vivian's voice was lazy. "It's not convenient for you to listen. Hurry up and tell me her phone number." The man smiled. He rolled up his military uniform with one hand and put the phone on his shoulder. He was incomparably handsome. "I won't say." Hellion Vivian. Why did she have such a boss and good friend? He really deserved a beating. "You seem to be very angry." The man's lips curled into a mischievous smile. "Is there a problem with your man?" Hellion Vivian chuckled. "If you're too smart, you'll be silenced. There are so many people who want to assassinate me. It won't be troublesome to add one more." The man paused as if he had thought of something. He said to the little blonde who was still typing, "Do you want an egg?" "Yes, yes, yes." The little golden retriever immediately came over and commanded the man, "Add some baby cabbage and 2 eggs, one for you and one for me." Hellion Vivian listened carefully to the movements on the other side. Suddenly, her thin lips curved and her voice became louder. "Is it Mrs. Tang? Mrs. Tang?" The little golden retriever tilted its head with its chopsticks in its mouth. "Was it calling me?" The man looked at her round eyes and slightly red face and said with a faint smile, "She is indeed looking for you. She said she wants to talk about women." "Ah, oh." Little golden retriever took the phone and said cautiously, "Hello." Hellion Vivian chuckled and said, "Hello, Mrs. Tang." The little golden retriever's ears were a little hot. Although they had been married for a long time, it seemed that no one had called her Mrs. Tang. The most important thing was that she liked this name. "Yes, yes." The little golden retriever listened to Hellion Vivian with a serious face. Then, ignoring the man who was cooking noodles behind her, she took the phone and walked to the study. "According to my experience, this kind of thing should be done by force." Hellion Vivian thought about the scene of Mr. Tang being raped and fell silent. It was too cruel. Even Mr. Tang dared to rape her. What kind of person was he? "Hello. Why don't you speak?" The little golden retriever chuckled. "Do you also think that my method is super invincible? Think about it. You're an arms tycoon. It's natural for you to be on top." It was very rare for the two of them to hit it off so decisively in terms of positioning. Hellion Vivian immediately accepted the little golden retriever's proposal. "Do you have a more detailed plan?" "Of course." The little golden retriever immediately said, "Is there any wine at home? Get him drunk first. Then get a pair of handcuffs. Use a harder one to open and hide the key well. As long as you can handcuff him to the bed, he'll be at your mercy. In the past, when I was dealing with Fox Tang, I used this trick. Drunken mess." After that, Fox Tang cried and asked me to take responsibility. You should know that women like us will definitely take responsibility for men to the end. Helene Vivian didn't speak because she couldn't imagine what kind of scene it would be. Wait a minute. Any handcuffs in Mr. Tang's hands should be unlocked in minutes. That person maintained the national record for weapon disassembly. What was a pair of handcuffs to him? Unless Mr. Tang was willing to do it. In other words, he deliberately got drunk and then let others take responsibility for him. Shameless, too shameless. However, Mrs. Tang's idea could be considered. Ordinary handcuffs didn't work on His Highness, then what about other things? I understand. I'll do as you say. Helene Vivian also laughed. When the time comes and it's successful, I'll tell you. Okay. The little golden retriever happily hung up the phone. When she turned around, she saw the man leaning against the door frame and staring at her. His legs were very long and his military uniform was straight. However, the collar was pulled open by her when he kissed her just now. It made him feel sexy and seductive. Suddenly, she remembered the two of them in bed this morning and couldn't help but blush. But that wasn't the point. The point was, he didn't hear what she said on the phone just now, right? The noodles will get cold if you don't eat. The man walked over and looked down at her bare feet. He sighed helplessly. How many times have I said that even if the room is carpeted, you have to wear shoes? Give me your hand. I'll carry you to the living room. The little golden retriever was still guilty. Of course, she would do whatever the man said. After all, judging from his reaction, he probably didn't hear what she said. But what she didn't expect was that as soon as the man carried her, he opened his thin lips and kissed her ear. The corners of his mouth curled up into a smile. Why didn't you tell her that I made you cry that day? The little golden retriever trembled. Before she could stop him, she was pressed into the soft sofa by the man. Then, his slightly cold lips landed on her body again and again. He restrained her wrist with one hand, not giving her a chance to get up at all. He really did hear it. What about carrying her to the living room? It was all a lie. Oh. Chapter 1045. On the other side, Helene Vivian still didn't know the consequences of her call. She was observing His Highness's actions with a frown. She didn't really want to force herself on His Highness. She just wanted to sleep with His Highness in her arms. However, he didn't seem to like touching her anymore. Therefore, she had to use some other methods. Since she wanted to lock him up, she had to think carefully about how to lock him up. Helene Wei stroked her chin with her fingers. In any case, judging from the current state of His Highness, it should be easier to deal with him than when he was an adult. When the time came, she just had to think of a way to get him drunk and handcuff him. Then, she could sleep peacefully with him in her arms until dawn. What are you thinking about? A voice suddenly sounded in her ear. Helene Vivian looked up and saw Beligaju looking at her with one hand on the table. No, nothing. Helene Vivian immediately stood up. I just received a job. I'm going out in the afternoon. Pack up. With that, Helene Vivian didn't care about the reaction of the person behind her. She turned around and went into the bedroom. With a certain someone's sharp eyes, she couldn't hide it well. She might be exposed. It was better not to let the person in question know that she had locked him up in bed. Millimeter. She had to plan well. Bailey Jiaoju looked at the side of the closed wooden door. That pair of deep eyes became darker and darker, as if a storm was brewing. What was her reaction just now? Was she avoiding him? Sure enough, he couldn't let his guard down. His fingers slowly clenched and hung by his side. In an instant, a thick black fog filled the entire study. Beligaju raised his hand and gently licked the blood off his fingers. His silver hair fell down, making it impossible to see his expression. However, the half-curled corners of his mouth clearly showed his demonic nature. Ah, I can't control myself anymore. Beligaju chuckled. With a move of his fingers, the wooden table next to him instantly turned into ashes. It was as if he had done some special effects. There wasn't even a sound. When he turned around, there was a thick layer of wood shavings. Some wood shavings were still floating in the air. The demons shivered and did not dare to come out of the black fog. Beligaju took off the black gloves that were stained with blood and threw them aside. His voice was very cold. "Clean this place up." "Yes." The demons lowered their heads, wondering when the Cold War between Wang Fei and Master would end. If it didn't, the next time Master would shatter them instead of the wooden table. Hellion Vivian didn't see this scene. If she knew that no matter what form he took, it wouldn't affect Beligaju's combat strength, she would never have thought of getting him drunk and taking him to bed. Unfortunately, Hellion Vivian was still unaware of this loophole. Her plan was completely based on Beligaju's current state. It was almost 2 o'clock by the time he was done with these things. Hellion Vivian looked at her watch and pulled over a black backpack. There were many professional things in it. After all, the previous clients were all one person, but this time, there were 4 of them. If she had to bring 4 people to the crime scene, it wouldn't be easy to control. The human heart was the most difficult to predict. If someone had thoughts that they shouldn't have, it would give the evil ghost a chance to take advantage of them. It was better not to have something as troublesome as being possessed by a ghost. Hellion Vivian took a few dog blood red ropes and put them in her backpack. Probably because she was about to grow into her human form, she could actually change her clothes. She took off her kasaya and put on a simple pure white t-shirt, denim hot pants, and a bright collar around her neck. There was a bright black gem on the collar. She matched it with a pair of Muji 90 sunglasses and put them on her head. The phoenix scimitar turned into a large body prayer bead and circled around her slender wrist. This outfit made Hellion Vivian look like a high school student who had just graduated. The shoes on her feet were the popular Givenchy canvas shoes. Her whole person was brimming with a youthful aura. Coupled with her long and curly hair that hung straight behind her waist, she always made people's eyes light up. What's more, she was riding a BMW Tomahawk. "Get in." Hellion Vivian put on her sunglasses and looked sideways at Beligaju. Her long legs supported the ground, she looked very handsome. The more she was like this, the more he wanted to bully her. He wanted her to only look at him and helplessly hold his neck. Beligaju's eyes darkened for a moment, then he curled his lips and smiled meaningfully. "Yes, my master." Hellion Vivian sat in the front. She had always driven fast. With a move of her right hand, the BMW Tomahawk rushed out like a line. Beligaju's hands, which were wearing black gloves, were placed by his side. He never raised them. After Hellion Vivian stopped the car, she realized that from the beginning to the end, a certain highness didn't even touch the corner of her clothes. "Hey!" Hellion Vivian had the urge to ask clearly. Beligaju turned his head. Although his fluffy white ears were hidden, his face was still very delicate. "What's wrong?" "Nothing." Hellion Vivian put on her sunglasses and covered her eyes guiltily. She couldn't ask. What if she got a worse answer? Moreover, if she asked, a certain someone would definitely be on guard against her. How could she get him drunk then? So, it was better to leave it at that for now. "I'll do it later. Be careful to hide your identity. After all, it's daytime now." What was she talking about? She clearly didn't want to talk about this. Bailey Jiaju took a step forward and paused for a moment. Then, he turned around and looked at her deeply. That look made Hellion Vivian feel an inexplicable stab of pain. "Don't worry, my respected master. I won't let anyone know that I'm a demon." Bailey Jiaju's thin lips curled up. He was clearly speaking the same incomparably gentlemanly words as before, but Wei indeed heard that faint mockery from within. "Mockery?" Hellion Vivian paused and wanted to explain. "Aren't you leaving?" He had already pushed open the door of the Korean restaurant. His indifferent back view was filled with rejection and alienation. Hellion Vivian couldn't immediately follow him. After all, she had to stop the car. However, the two of them had never been like this before. Because of a misunderstanding, there was a distance between them. It seemed that the more she explained, the less she got to the point. Was it because she cared too much? The more she was worried about losing him, the more she was worried about hearing the answer. That was why she changed the topic like this. However, it was obvious that this method was useless. Tonight, when night fell, She had to completely resolve this matter. No matter what, she just wanted a quick end. Chapter 1046. This was because it wasn't time for dinner yet. Hence, there weren't many people in the restaurant. However, the decorations were especially beautiful and had the characteristics of a cave. As soon as she pushed open the door, she could see Quan Jilong's billboard. The heavy metal atmosphere was very strong, and Big Bang's song was playing. As soon as Hellion Vivian entered, her gaze fell on the innermost table before she even took 2 steps. Because there were only 4 people sitting there, it was obvious that they were indeed postgraduate students. 3 of them were wearing glasses. There were 2 girls and 2 boys, and they were all dressed very casually. Hellion Vivian walked towards them. The atmosphere between the 4 of them was very solemn. They didn't order anything to eat. Instead, they each ordered a cold drink with an ashtray in the middle. All of them had their heads lowered, and no one knew what they were thinking. One of them sensed that Hellion Vivian was walking towards them, so she tugged at the blue shirt next to her. Jing Tian, someone's here. Is it the Daobao shop owner you contacted? The person named Jing Tian raised her head, and the other 2 did the same. Hello, I'm Hellion Vivian. I'm from the Yin Yang shop. Hellion Vivian was very straightforward and didn't say anything unnecessary. Can you tell me what happened that day? It's best if you can be more detailed. The 4 of them didn't speak, because they never expected that the master they were looking forward to would be a high school student. And such a beautiful high school student. The young man behind her was even more indescribable. He looked like he was in his 3rd year of middle school, right? However, he had a handsome face that made people want to scream, short silver hair, and the clothes he was wearing. A black tuxedo. Tight gloves without a single wrinkle. What era was this outfit from? Hellion Vivian saw that the 4 of them were still sizing her and Belagaju up, but she didn't rush them. After all, from a psychological point of view, most people wouldn't believe in the existence of experts younger than them. The 4 of them had the same expression on their faces, and they looked at each other for a long time. In the end, it was Xiao Jingtian, who was in contact with Hellion Vivian, who spoke. Are there only 2 of you in the shop? Where's your manager? I am the store manager. Hellion Vivian smiled gently. You can tell me anything. Xiao Jingtian was still hesitating. She glanced at her 3 companions beside her. No one said anything. She didn't know how to continue. Originally, she had found this Daobao shop on the internet. Many people said that this shop was very effective. She also went into the Daobao shop and specifically looked at the positive reviews. Although there were very few people who left a review, basically maintaining 1 review every 2 days, every review was very real. It didn't seem like a gimmick. What they were most afraid of now was encountering a warlock who didn't know anything. It was said that the yin and yang trade was very profitable. 9 out of 10 feng shui masters were fake, and the remaining 1 might not be famous. After all, in this era, everything was hyped up. She had also asked her family to look for Master Xiao Yun, who had been on TV recently. When the other party heard that someone had died, he didn't even dare to pick up the call. He only said that he was too busy recently and needed to cultivate. Xiao Jingtian didn't believe him at all. In the past, when did he not show up when money was spent? All they did was use ghost shell divination to fool people. This time, he definitely didn't show up because he was afraid. The more the situation was like this, the more Xiao Jingtian didn't dare to trust people casually. Hellion Vivian also saw her concerns. Since you've come to me, you should have seen the rules of my shop. If the matter isn't resolved, I won't charge you a single cent, so there's no element of deception in this. When Xiao Jingtian heard her say this, she also felt that it was a little rude. Shop owner, we didn't mean that. It's just that this matter is no small matter. We're just afraid and don't know what to do. Besides, to be honest, your age is beyond our expectations. Age doesn't affect one's profession. Hellion Vivian's lips curled up. There's no yin energy here, so I can't prove it, but I can do a simple divination for you. From your looks, you have good fortune and are destined to be rich and powerful. Since you're still a graduate student and don't have a job, it means that your family is in business. Xiao Jingtian's eyes widened, as if she couldn't believe that the other party could guess what her family did after just meeting her for the first time. After all, among these students, only one knew about her family background because she usually didn't dress conspicuously and had always been very ordinary. The woman in pink sitting next to Xiao Jingtian was also shocked by Helian Vivian's deduction. Jingtian, could it be that when the two of you were chatting earlier, you sent her some kind of message? For example, you could name any price you want. No. Xiao Jingtian was sure that she hadn't said anything. The other two boys stared at Xiao Jingtian with wide eyes. You're in a big business? Xiao Jingtian originally didn't want too many people to know about her family while she was in graduate school. After all, her father's business was too famous in the area, and sometimes it was really troublesome. But since it was like this now, there was nothing to hide. My father is Xiao Haidong. The CEO of a certain corporation often appeared on the news. The two men were obviously shocked by this sudden news and looked at Xiao Jingtian in a daze. They didn't expect that Xiao Jingtian, who they thought came from a small city, would have such an identity. Helian Vivian didn't seem surprised at all and looked at the four of them with a smile. Xiao Jingtian still didn't understand. How did you know? There must be something that she hadn't noticed because she never believed in fortune-telling. You're wearing short-sighted glasses. Helian Wei's voice was very calm. It's not cheap. Most of the short-sighted spectacles worn by students cost between 600 to 800. Yours should be around 3,000. Also, the necklace you're wearing around your neck, although it's not made of gold, it's not cheap either. The latest model from Dior should cost a few thousand. I can see that you have a dignified character and don't seem like someone who takes the wrong path. You also know very well how to talk to people and make them accept you. These are all related to your family's upbringing. It should be that your family often takes you out to eat with the elders. Most of these people are businessmen, so I'm guessing that your family does business. After all, people from a small town shouldn't be so generous with their money. Moreover, you're very low-key and know how to hide your wealth. This means that you don't want people to notice your family. After listening to Helian Vivian's analysis, Xiao Jingtian's admiration for her almost exploded. She was even more professional than the police. Chapter 1047. So now, can you tell me what exactly happened? How did they die? Helian Vivian sat down. The smile on her face never disappeared, making her feel very comfortable. The four of them looked at each other, and one of the boys said hesitantly, "It was an accident. We didn't expect it at all. There was no experimental class on Wednesday afternoon, so the few of us agreed to play an escape room together. We chose a horror-themed game called Sobbing Otaku." Sobbing Otaku? Helian Vivian raised her eyebrows. What kind of name was that? The boy spat. That's right, it's Sobbing Otaku. We wanted to play something that other people wouldn't dare to play. After all, we were all science and technology students, so we weren't too resistant to this kind of thing. In fact, that escape room was scarier than we thought. When we went in, we wore blindfolds, and the person in the back put his arm around the person in front of him. There were 5 of you, and when you went in, you formed a straight line, right? Helian Vivian quickly reacted. At that time, there shouldn't have been any problems. Xiao Jingtian looked at her in shock. You guessed it right again. There's no need to guess. Helian Vivian chuckled. The way you walked is called the pure yang technique in formations, and it's used to ward off evil spirits. Generally, when you walk like this and wear blindfolds, you won't look left, right, front, or back, and you'll be able to form a formation. This kind of formation can play a protective role to a certain extent. The 4 of them didn't know that there was such a thing. Helian Vivian took out her phone and waved it. Continue. After we opened our blindfolds, we entered a very ordinary escape room. The room was very small, and we needed to find clues to open 3 locks, the boy said in a low voice. Originally, there was no problem until the last lock was opened, and a wardrobe popped out. That wardrobe can only fit 1 person at most. A sliding wardrobe? Helian Vivian had obviously played this game before, so she quickly guessed the main point. You need to go in one by one to find clues. The boy nodded and said with some difficulty, I was the first to go in. The setting inside was very scary, and I was shocked at the time. You know, I was separated from another room, and there was only a flashlight, and it shone on a woman in white hanging. That was the scariest moment. I hurriedly asked them to come over. I waited until I was scared because it was too scary. After we came over, we didn't want to stay in that small place any longer, so we quickly took a picture of the clues and wanted to go out. To be honest, I was really scared at that time. I didn't want to be the last to go out, but I can't let a girl be the last to go out. When Chen Yang saw that, he said that he would be the last to go out, and asked us to go first. After we went to the main hall, we pulled the wardrobe to get him to come over. But no one expected that something would happen at that time. The boy reached out and covered his face, his whole body trembling. After we went out, we wanted to pull him back, but we found that the wardrobe seemed to be stuck by something. No matter how hard we pulled, it wouldn't budge. At that time, a woman's cries began to sound in the secret room. There was also Chen Yang's voice. He seemed to be convulsing. We were scared and tried to pull the wardrobe, but no matter how hard we pulled, it wouldn't budge. We started to shout Chen Yang's name and hit the wardrobe, but it didn't work. I hurriedly pressed the walkie-talkie to call the shop owner who had escaped from the secret room. After he came in and cut off all the power in the secret room, the wardrobe was pulled out. Then we found Chen Yang. He was already lying there. Hellion Vivian paused for a moment and put the phone on the table. Then, how did the woman's cries come about? Was there a sound effect in the secret room, or did you really hear something that others couldn't hear? We don't know. The four of them looked at each other again. In the end, they gave Hellion Vivian an answer with uncertainty. Hellion Vivian stood up. Then we can only go back and play again to understand the rules. Now, go back and play again. One of the girls widened her eyes. She was the only one who wasn't wearing glasses, so her fear was particularly prominent. No, we can't. Hellion Vivian raised her eyebrows. Why? It's only been a while since the murder happened. Would they let people play again? The girl stuttered. That place was cordoned off by the police some time ago. How could they possibly reopen? Hellion Vivian lowered her eyes and looked at her. You also said that it was a while ago. The person you're talking about should be long gone, right? How do you know? Xiao Jingtian was really admiring this high school student shop owner more and more. Hellion Vivian laughed. Generally speaking, when a murder case like this happens, the police won't be able to give any clues. Even if you're close friends, you wouldn't think of asking a yin-yang master to deal with this kind of thing. You're just postgraduate students at the same university. Although you're usually close, you don't actually talk about everything, right? Otherwise, how could you not know about each other's family situation? Since your relationship was so ordinary, you probably wouldn't have kept harping on this matter in the beginning. After all, you still need to study. Moreover, the police also said that they didn't have any clues, so the possibility of it being an accident is very high. Of course, this matter will definitely leave a shadow in your heart. You'll definitely have nightmares at night, and you'll also see a psychiatrist or something. These are all normal, but after going through these stages, you'll probably deliberately choose not to mention this matter. After all, everyone subconsciously chooses to forget the terrifying memories and avoid touching them if possible. It's best if this matter can become a secret. I believe that at that time, whether it's the school's leaders or outsiders, they'll keep asking you about this matter. It wasn't easy for you to deal with all these things, so how could you let this matter become the center of your worries again? Bringing it up again means that you'll fall into that nightmare again. Since it's so painful, why are you still so concerned about it? It's very simple. It's not that you want to do anything for the dead person, but that you're afraid of something unknown. The four of them suddenly froze. Their expressions were constantly changing, and everyone's expressions were different. However, this meant that Hellion Vivian's words had once again hit the nail on the head. Xiao Jingtian clenched her fists and said unwillingly, "Shop owner, aren't you going too far by saying this? It's as if I only care about myself and don't have any humanity." Chapter 1048. After hearing Xiao Jingtian's words, Helian Vivian wasn't annoyed. Her voice was calm as she said, "What you're showing now is true humanity. I'm not saying that this is bad. If you really didn't have any kindness in your hearts, you wouldn't be here. For example, you could have relied on your family's ability to get your parents to send you abroad, but you didn't do so. This means that you want to solve this matter, not only for yourself, but also for your dead friend. There are many gray areas in this world, and everyone wants different things. But now, none of the four of you want to experience such a terrifying thing again, right? Or perhaps your current life has already caused you trouble, and you have to solve it eventually. If you don't want to face unknown dangers again, then solve it completely today and play again." After hearing Helian Vivian's words, the four of them fell into deep thought, as if they were considering it. In the end, Xiao Jingtian was the first to break the silence. "Then let's play again." "Very good." Helian Vivian smiled and looked to the side. "What about the others?" The three graduate students looked at each other, and the scared girl also clenched her fists. "Let's play again." "In that case, let's go." Helian Vivian picked up her sunglasses and phone from the table. "It's only 4 in the afternoon, so it's not dark yet. Although it's best to play at night, because it's an escape room, let's go tomorrow. That way, you guys won't be so scared." The two men felt embarrassed to be told that they were scared by a high school student, so they reached out and scratched their heads. The escape room was in an old alley in Beijing. The alley was very deep, but it was very well known. This escape room was also very popular on the internet. Before Helian Vivian set off, she asked Monkey to help her quickly check it out. Although there had been all kinds of rumors about the escape room before, nothing had ever happened. Instead, many people said that the place was not clean. But it was precisely because of this that it attracted more enthusiasts to play it. After all, playing an escape room was all about excitement and nervousness. The escape room was indeed closed for a period of time because of the graduate students. However, under normal circumstances, as long as the case was over, the location of the incident would reopen. However, after all, such a terrifying thing had happened before, so even though 4 months had passed and the secret room had reopened, there were not as many people who came to play as before. It was more than a little desolate. Especially with the theme of the sobbing house, no one dared to enter it again. By the time Helian Vivian and the others arrived, the shop owner had already locked the theme. Obviously, he was not going to accept any more customers. Of course, when the shop owner looked up and saw the 4 people, his expression froze. It was obvious that he recognized them as the graduate students who had played the sobbing house theme back then. "You still dare to come?" If it weren't for that incident, his business wouldn't have been so miserable. Xiao Jingtian was a little embarrassed. "Store owner. How unlucky. I won't be opening for the next 2 days. You guys should be the same. Ever since that time, you definitely don't want to play the secret rooms anymore. Aren't you afraid?" The shop owner really didn't understand what young people were thinking these days, but this time, he wasn't going to entertain them anymore. "Hurry up and go back." Helian Vivian moved to the side and stood in front of the shop owner. Psychologically speaking, the more afraid you are of something, the more you have to face it in order to free yourself from it. "I don't think you've had too many customers during this period of time, right? Don't you want to restore the flow of customers here? Besides, after what happened, no matter where you open a shop in the future, you'll be questioned. Many people will be worried about their safety and won't dare to come here to play. If we can play it again, the shop owner's reputation will be restored, and this shop will no longer be a deterrent. No matter what, it's a good deal for the shop owner." Of course, the shop owner knew that if someone could play it again, it would be a good thing for him personally. However, he said, "I don't want you to take that risk again." As he spoke, he laughed bitterly. "I even wanted to knock down the sobbing house theme and renovate it again. But even so, I can't sell these rooms anymore. This is a place where every inch of land is worth its weight in gold. Who would have thought that it would become like this? In Beijing, no one dares to buy a place where there has been a murder case. I'm also very particular about this. If something happens to you guys again, what should I do? Actually, I'm a yin-yang master. I specialize in helping people deal with things that aren't too clean. Helene Vivian smiled lightly and zipped up her school bag. These are all my tools. Since you're doing a supernatural theme, you should have some understanding of these things. The shop owner looked at the things in front of him and was completely stunned. The dog blood red rope, the yellow talisman, the compass, the yin-yang fish, and the 8 trigrams. Every one of them symbolized Helene Vivian's identity. Helene Vivian smiled again. Before entering the shop, I deliberately observed that there are 4 rooms here. The windows of each room are facing the sun. The windows of the other 3 are closed, and only one is open. However, that room has 2 locks. If I'm not wrong, that's the sobbing house. The windows are opened for exposure to the sun. In such a day, the yang energy is the strongest. Moreover, the house here occupies the dragon vein. After exposure to the sun, it's very difficult for there to be any undead in the room. So, shop owner, let's go in. What are you worried about? If the shop owner was still doubting Helene Weiwei just now, after hearing her opinion on feng shui, his attitude suddenly changed. With a relaxed smile on his face, he said, I have seen many self-proclaimed masters, but you are the first person who can see that there is a dragon vein here at a glance. Shop owner, you're not simple either. The setting is very particular. Helene Vivian looked up. Especially the zhongkue on the door wall. Ghosts can't enter. When the shop owner heard this, he knew that he had met an expert this time. In fact, he wanted to solve the current problem more than anyone else. He had invited many friends to watch the scene. Either he didn't have the slightest bit of real knowledge, or he kept shaking his head after reading it and couldn't say anything. But today, this little girl's every sentence was straight to the point. Perhaps, if it was her, she could really solve his dilemma. Why do you want to play it again? When Helene Vivian heard the shop owner's words, she knew that the shop owner had a chance to change his mind. The corners of her mouth curled up meaningfully, because when people are afraid, it's easy to reveal flaws. Chapter 1049. The shop owner didn't quite understand Helene Vivian's words, but he had already made up his mind to let her play the game again, so it didn't matter what kind of answer Helene Vivian gave at this time. The shop owner took out the walkie-talkie and eye masks and placed them directly in Helene Vivian's hand. I'll open the door to the sobbing house in a while, then I'll lead all of you there. During this time, all of you have to wear eye masks. The person behind you will put his hands on the shoulders of the person in front of you. When I say you can open your eyes, you can open them. When you're in the secret room, if you have any questions or want to get any clues, you can use the walkie-talkie to ask for help. Okay. Helene Vivian counted the eye masks. There were 6 in total. She frowned and then pointed at Beligaju with her chin. Just give me 5. He's not going in. Beligaju, who had been standing at the side all this time, was shocked. Then, his thin lips curled up. Is this an order from Master? That smile was very cold. It seemed like he was unhappy. Unhappy. Helene Vivian suddenly paused. She felt that there couldn't be any more misunderstandings at this time. She had to speak properly. It's not an order, Helene Vivian said vaguely. It's just that it's not appropriate for you to go in with us because of your status. When the 4 graduate students at the side heard this, they looked at Helene Vivian with condemnation in their eyes. It was as if they were saying that in this day and age, she was still judging people based on their status. However, Beligaju understood what she meant. After being stunned for a moment, he really smiled. I can go in alone first, then you guys can come in. Alone? The shop owner shouted, No. That's too dangerous. The other 4 people were also worried about letting such a beautiful young man go in first. If you're not afraid and want to go in with us, then go in together. Why do you have to be separated? Even if we're your boss, there are some things you can ignore. It was obvious that Xiao Jingtian's words were meant for Helene Vivian to hear. After all, this was the first time she had seen someone treat an employee so kindly. To be honest, although she admired this exorcist shop a lot, she didn't like her. This person was too utilitarian and thought of everyone's human nature in a very dark way. Therefore, She and this kind of person were born to be at odds. Hellion Vivian never liked to explain things, especially to outsiders. She smiled and ignored Xiao Jingtian's words. Instead, she turned to Beligaju and said, "Ju, will do as you say. You go in first." "All right." Beligaju chuckled and took a step forward. His gloved hand gripped the iron lock, and with a flick of his finger, the wooden door in front of everyone immediately opened. No one knew what method he used to unlock the door. Even the innkeeper was dumbfounded with the key in his hand. He had locked the door twice. "Wait a minute." Xiao Jingtian stopped Beligaju. "Are you really going in first? It was very dangerous inside. What's more, you have to cover your eyes. What if something happens?" Beligaju didn't answer her, nor did he ask the innkeeper for a blindfold. Instead, he took out a black handkerchief from the pocket of his black suit jacket and casually tied it behind his head. His eyes were covered, leaving behind his exquisite facial features that made people's hearts pound even faster. There was still a smile on his face. After all, only he understood that someone didn't want him to go in with everyone. It was obvious that she was protecting him. After all, once the pure yang formation was formed, if he followed behind, he would either destroy the formation's effect or be affected by the yang energy and become uncomfortable. Was she treating him the same way she treated the little devil? Ha! She was so cute and careful with him. Inexplicably, Hellion Vivian felt that a certain highness was in a very good mood right now. She glanced over and said, "After you go in, find a place to hide first." "Yes, my respected master." As expected, she was worried that the formation would hurt him. It seemed that his current form wasn't completely useless. It could still make her think of him at all times. Beligaju's thin lips curled up as he slowly walked into the unknown darkness. Xiao Jingtian didn't expect to have such a loyal subordinate. She glanced at Hellion Vivian and shook her head. The innkeeper was still very worried. "Is he really going to be okay?" "Don't worry, my assistant is very good." Hellion Vivian chuckled and put on the blindfold. Then, as if she had thought of something, she took it off again. By the way, when these friends were playing earlier, they said that they would hear a woman crying inside. I want to ask if this was the sound effect you set, or only they can hear it. The innkeeper nodded. "Oh, that. It's just a sound effect. There's nothing special about it." "I understand." Hellion Vivian put on the blindfold again and said crisply, "Let's go in now." All four of them were very nervous. Unlike Hellion Vivian, many of them didn't want to experience that scene again. But there was no other way. This matter had to be resolved. Because if it wasn't resolved, they would be killed. Catcher. There was the sound of a lock. Then, a woman's voice immediately sounded. It could be heard that it was recorded on the radio. "Hey! There were 6 of you last time. Why are there 5 this time? Where's the girl who's missing? Where did she go?" "A girl." Hellion Vivian immediately took off the blindfold. What came into view was a piece of clothing hanging above her head, fluttering back and forth like a female ghost. However, this wasn't what she was concerned about. What she was concerned about was the background story itself. After all, the 4 of them had played this game before, so they knew how to solve the problem. They went straight to the combination lock next to them and shouted, "Hurry up and unlock it." "Wait, let me finish listening to the background story first." Hellion Vivian pricked up her ears. The woman's voice continued, "Didn't you notice that one of you is missing? Ah, I see her. She's waiting for you underground. If you want to escape this curse, think carefully. What sin did you commit? Was it indifference, selfishness, or arrogance? All the answers are in this house. You must find the answers before midnight and redeem your sins. Otherwise, there is only one result, and that is death." This recording made one's hair stand on end. One of the girls among the 4 of them had already started to turn pale. "Don't listen anymore. Hurry up and unlock the first lock according to the password we calculated before." "What's the password for the first lock? Do you still remember?" Xiao Jingtian turned around and looked at her classmates. No one could tell her the answer. because they suddenly remembered that the person who had unlocked the first combination lock was the deceased, Zhong Heng. Chapter 1050. In an instant, everyone shuddered in fear. Hurry up. Turn on the walkie-talkie and ask the shop owner what the password is. Someone was already starting to get scared. It was the girl who was already very timid. The other 3 people were also a little uneasy, especially the boy who was holding the walkie-talkie. He was so scared that his hands were trembling, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't turn on the walkie-talkie button. Hellion Vivian watched from the side and reached out to stop their movements. Her voice was calm as she said, "It's just a very normal recording. What are you guys so nervous about? You're even holding the walkie-talkie upside down." The 4 of them looked at each other and didn't say anything, but it was obvious that some of them were sweating profusely because of some unknown matter. Hellion Vivian continued, "Also, you don't need to ask the shop owner. It's not that difficult to enter the next level." As she spoke, Hellion Wei Wei turned on the flashlight and focused the beam of light on the ceiling beside the clothes. There was a couplet written there, which seemed to be used to suppress evil spirits. The ceiling beside the couplet was obviously different. "This is a secret door, reuniting after 60 years of age. Try 141. The timid female graduate student immediately entered the password according to Hellion Vivian's instructions. With a click, the safety lock was opened. The female graduate student's eyes widened and she looked at Hellion Vivian in shock. "You're so smart." Xiao Jingtian also glanced at Hellion Vivian. "How did you guess it? Even Zhong Heng couldn't solve it so quickly back then." Reopening means that there are 2 chances. 70 multiplied by 2 is 140. Reopening means that there are 2 chances. 70 multiplied by 2 is 140. Reopening means that you add 1, and the final result is 141, Hellion Vivian said as she shone the flashlight on the safe. Xiao Jingtian wasn't so scared anymore, but she suddenly remembered something. "Where's your assistant? Why aren't you worried about him at all?" Hellion Vivian turned to look at her and called out into the darkness, "Ju." After a while, a tall and slender figure walked out of the darkness. There was a smile on his face. "I'm here." "Okay." Hellion Vivian nodded and continued to study the safe. Xiao Jingtian didn't say anything else. Hellion Vivian was very focused. After all, if His Highness came in alone and didn't have her spiritual aura as a cover, no matter how much he tried to hide his devil aura, it would still remain and affect the aura in this room. In other words, even if there were dead spirits here, they should have all been scared away by His Highness. Therefore, Hellion Vivian was not worried that the 4 of them would be possessed by ghosts. If that was the case, then she could focus on the clues. That's right. From the very beginning, Hellion Vivian found it strange. The reason for that was because she suspected that there was no vengeful spirit this time. The reason was very simple. If there really was a ghost killing people, this should be a place where it was easy to condense resentment, which was why it could cause evil spirits to kill people. However, after Hellion Vivian arrived, she realized that this secret room didn't attract resentment as easily as other places. Although there were many realistic settings inside, the shop owner happened to be someone who knew feng shui, so the layout of each room was quite particular. He even knew how to use pure yang energy to dry the room to achieve a certain effect of getting rid of resentment. Of course, no matter what kind of feng shui array it was, it couldn't stop evil spirits from hating people. Then, she would start from the second point. If this evil spirit was attracted by this group of people, then, the person who was killed by the ghost would become a vengeful spirit and stay in this secret room forever. Wherever there was a vengeful spirit, there would be a certain amount of supernatural events. However, the shop owner himself wasn't affected by any resentment. As soon as Hellion Vivian entered, she observed the shop owner's face and didn't find anything wrong with him. Moreover, if there was really something scary here, the shop owner would definitely sell this courtyard house immediately. He didn't move out immediately, which meant that there was nothing unusual here except for the murder case. In other words, the person who was killed wasn't killed by a ghost. However, it was obvious that the death of the deceased wasn't an accident. In this way, There was only one possibility left, which was that a person killed someone. In other words, what was in front of her was a secret room murder case. Helene Vivian glanced at the female graduate student who was still trembling and the other 3 people. Logically speaking, if it was a secret room murder case, the shop owner should be the biggest suspect. After all, he was the one who was most familiar with this secret room, so it would be easy for him to kill someone. However, before coming here, Helene Vivian asked Monkey to investigate. There was nothing suspicious about this shop owner who escaped from the secret room. He didn't even know these people at all. In other words, the shop owner had no motive to kill people. Helene Vivian only squatted down for a few seconds, but her thoughts never stopped. There wasn't enough evidence. In any secret room murder case, the most important evidence would stay at the first scene. Other than the police, no one else had been here, which meant that the crime scene was relatively well protected. This was also one of the reasons why Helene Vivian ruled out the shop owner as the murderer. If the shop owner was the murderer, he could have demolished this place after the investigation. However, he didn't do that. She could only continue to look for him. She had to play until the victim was killed. Helene Vivian quickly locked her thoughts and shone the flashlight into the safe. What's this? A photo? That's the background of the story. The boy holding the walkie-talkie said, "The origin of the sobbing house is because 6 good friends agreed to go on an adventure together. However, during the adventure, one of them died in the house because of the cowardice of the other 5. Many years later, when the 5 of them stepped into the sobbing house again, they had to find the sins they had committed back then and sincerely repent before they could clear the level." Helene Vivian's eyes flashed. "How do you know so much?" "When the 5 of us came to play, we all read the introduction online," the boy replied. Helene Vivian raised her eyebrows. "All 5 of you have read it?" "Yeah." The boy was very confused. "What's wrong?" "Nothing." Helene Vivian's finger brushed past it, and her eyes lowered slightly. This meant that they weren't completely unfamiliar with the secret room. If the murderer knew how to clear the level in advance through the internet, it would be best if he was more prepared than the others. He could use the mechanisms here to kill people. Of course, this was just her hypothesis. But if her hypothesis was correct, then one of the 4 people would definitely be the murderer. Chapter 1051. Helene Vivian raised her head and glanced at each of them. What kind of reason would make her or him kill someone who could be considered a good friend? And why would they choose to do it in a secret room? She still had to continue looking for evidence. At the very least, she had to figure out if there was any conflict between these people. Most of the murders that happened at this age were due to love. After all, they didn't have any interests involved. So here was the problem. Although these people often came out to play, they weren't a couple. How could such a thing happen? Helene Vivian couldn't figure this out either. She looked at the photo in her hand again. There were 6 people in the photo, but one of them had been scratched out with something like a knife. There was a sentence written below, "Have you forgotten my name?" "What's going on?" Helene Vivian asked the boy who was holding the walkie-talkie. "Was the photo like this when you first came here?" The boy nodded. "Yes." "Is that so?" Helene Vivian narrowed her eyes. "Is the password for one of the locks a 4-digit English alphabet?" The other boy was surprised. "How did you know?" She clearly hadn't checked the lock here just now. "It's obvious that this photo gave us a hint." Helene Vivian shone the flashlight on the person's name that had been scratched out. "This person's name is Chen Hong, and the password is Hong, Hong." Xiao Jingtian looked at Helene Vivian in shock. In just a few minutes, they had already opened the second lock. All 4 of them remembered that the first time they came to play, they wasted a whole 10 minutes on the first lock, not to mention the second lock, which no one could unlock at all. If they hadn't asked the store owner for a hint and the store owner hadn't told them to pay attention to the sentence in the photo, "Have you forgotten my name?" they wouldn't have been able to figure out what the password was at all. "You're so smart." The timid girl couldn't help but exclaim. Helene Vivian chuckled softly and pretended to reply casually, "Girls don't actually need to be so smart. It's good to be as pretty as you. That's how you'll attract boys." Not at all. The girl blushed at the compliment, but she raised her head. Obviously, she enjoyed Helly and Vivian's compliment. The rest of the people also relaxed because of the topic of Helly and Vivian. They chatted with each other and didn't seem as scared as they were when they first came in. The five of you always hang out together. Haven't you thought about finding a girlfriend? Helly and Vivian asked the boy who was holding the walkie-talkie. The boy pushed his glasses up his nose bridge. I haven't considered that yet. Oh. He hasn't considered it. What about you? Helly and Vivian looked at the boy who was flipping through the clues. You're so tall, and your face is so tough. Don't tell me you haven't thought about finding a girlfriend. As soon as Helly and Vivian said this, the expressions of the four people changed at the same time. This was especially so for Xiao Jingtian. Her face was a little pale, and she didn't know why. The timid girl and the boy who was holding the walkie-talkie looked at each other, then quickly looked away. All of their reactions indicated that they were hiding something. Helly and Vivian stopped in her tracks and looked at these people with her arms crossed. After a while, she said to Xiao Jingtian, Miss Xiao, since you want to solve the problem, then tell me all the secrets. Otherwise, it'll be very difficult for me to help you solve the problem. I don't think we need to talk about that, right? The timid girl looked at the tough boy and whispered softly. The boy lowered his head and said, It's okay. Tell us. Since it's helpful to us, then tell us everything. Okay. Xiao Jingtian clenched her fists and said, A long time ago, there were actually 6 of us who would come out to play together, but no one knew why. One day, Dong Sijie suddenly jumped off a building and committed suicide. Because of this, we were depressed for a long time. Dong Sijie was beautiful and got along well with everyone, so all of us liked her very much. The boys also wanted to pursue her, but she only liked Fei Yang. She waited for Fei Yang to play basketball and washed his clothes for him. In order to be closer to Fei Yang, she did so many things. However, before Fei Yang could be with her, Xiao Jingtian didn't continue speaking. It was only then that Helly and Vivian found out that the tough and handsome boy was called Chen Fei Yang. However, could things really be as simple as Xiao Jingtian said? Under normal circumstances, the more beautiful a girl was, the more envied by others. How could she make everyone like her? Helly and Wei was almost 100% sure that at the very least, that timid girl didn't really like this girl called Dong Sijie. This was because when she mentioned how she pursued Chen Fei Yang, the girl obviously curled her lips. The relationship between these 6 people seemed ordinary, but in fact, it was very complicated. 3 boys, 3 girls. Usually, they would get along very well. But if these 3 girls all liked the same boy, then things would become very complicated. From the way they acted just now, Helly and Vivian was sure that whether it was the timid female graduate student, Xiao Jingtian, or Dong Sijie, who had committed suicide previously, the one they liked was this boy named Chen Fei Yang. Then, what was the relationship between the other 2 boys like? Helly and Vivian had no idea. However, her intuition told her that Dong Sijie's suicide a year ago was decisively related to this murder in the locked room. Helly and Vivian glanced at the photo again and then thought about the background story here. Was it a coincidence? There were also 6 people, but 1 had left, so there were only 5 left. And the first time this group of people entered the locked room, there were also 5 people. Countless cases told us that the scene of a murder would unconsciously reflect the strongest desire in the murderer's heart. And all the recordings and furnishings in the locked room reflected that someone was emphasizing that they shouldn't forget the person who died. If they forgot and didn't repent for their sins, they had to stay. That was why this locked room murder case happened. If it weren't for the information from Monkey's investigation, Helly and Vivian would definitely suspect the shop owner again. For example, she would guess that the shop owner might be Dong Sijie's brother or some other relative, but he wasn't. The shop owner really had nothing to do with these researchers. Then, who on earth wanted to convey this message to them? Helly and Vivian almost instantly eliminated 2 people in her heart, and in the end, only 2 other people were left. They were Chen Fei Yang and the boy with the walkie-talkie. It was very simple. Because the person who did this must have liked Dong Sikhan very much, You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.